Thank you. Here. Welcome to regular City Council meeting, Tuesday, October 17th, 2023. We'll begin with roll call.
Councilmember Brookover.
Here.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg.
Here.
Mayor Bacon.
Present. Next up, I'll move approval of the agenda. I'm moving one item, item 4.4, moving it down to 5.4. And I'll look for a second.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Bacon, second by Councilperson Watson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I'll look next up, item 1.3. I'll look for approval of the minutes. Regular council meeting, October 3rd, 2023. City Council discussion only meeting, October 10th, 2023. All right, I'll move approval and look for a second.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Bacon, second by Mayor Pro Tem Gregg. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, item 2.1. We have a special presentation from MSU Sexual Assault Response Team, and we'd like to welcome them.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having us tonight. My name is Lauren Henfling, and I am the Sexual Assault Response Team Coordinator at MSU Center for Survivors.
And my name is Danielle Fenton. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Associate Director and Lead Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner of the MSU Sexual Assault Healthcare Program. And we're hoping our clicker works. We know you have a busy agenda, so we're going to try and go through it pretty quickly.
Just click. There you go.
Today we just want to talk about what the MSU Center for Survivors is, what the SART team is, help everyone understand the importance of the sexual assault healthcare program, and discuss the importance of the collaboration of a community and of the university in partnership with our SART team and East Lansing Police Department. Our mission is that we believe in the strength and resiliency of all people impacted by interpersonal violence. We stand with survivors against all forms of social injustice by promoting individual healing and building an empowered, inclusive community. The Center of Survivors encompasses a couple different programs, including the Sexual Assault Healthcare Program, the MSU SART, and then Safe Place, which is the domestic violence shelter. And then Lori will talk a little bit more about the Center for Survivors.
And SART, for those who aren't familiar, is Sexual Assault Response Team. You can go to the next slide. So we're going to start by just showing you a video of Center for Survivors for anybody who is not familiar with our services, and it is available to both the community and to MSU students.
Hello, welcome to the Center for Survivors. Center for Survivors is a safe place for community members who have experienced sexual violence at any point in their life. We believe in the dignity and worth of all survivors and strive to provide trauma-informed, survivor-centered, and culturally competent services to all survivors of sexual assault. In this video, the staff here at the Center for Survivors will provide you with information on how to get connected with Center for Survivors, the array of services we offer, and how to get immediate help if you are in the midst of a crisis. At Center for Survivors, all survivors are welcome.
At the Center for Survivors, we believe in inclusion and accessibility for all survivors. We understand that accessing a program located on a college campus can sometimes be confusing. To find our program, we're located on the second floor of the Student Services Building, on the corner of Farm Lane and East Circle Drive. The easiest way to get to the second floor is to come into the building through the Farm Lane entrance on the east side of the building. Once you enter the building, follow the Bluebirds up the stairs or take the elevator to the second floor. We would also like survivors to know that if language assistance is a benefit to your experience, we can accommodate your needs.
When you arrive at Center for Survivors, you will be greeted by one of our front office staff and checked into your appointment. The Survivor Lounge is a space designed for survivors to have a safe place on campus. While waiting for your appointment, you will notice there is coffee, tea, hot cocoa, books, TV, and more available to you. Some survivors come to our lounge to hang out in between classes or to have a quiet place to rest for a moment. You are welcome here. You are wanted here.
We offer a number of services here at Center for Survivors. All of our services are free and confidential. Our services include individual therapy for any MSU student who's been impacted by sexual violence at any point in their life. We also have groups and workshops. These change each semester, so please look to our website for the most up-to-date information. We have advocacy services available to any adult in the community who has experienced sexual violence. You do not have to be affiliated with MSU to access this service. We also have a crisis clinician available for walk-in crisis appointments Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week sexual assault hotline, and we have a crisis chat available daily from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. It can be accessed through our website. We recognize that healing comes in many forms, and we are hopeful that you'll be able to find a service that meets your needs.
Engaging in informal mental health support can be very scary. We want you to know that here at the Center for Survivors, you're in control. Our therapists are trained in multiple evidence-based treatments, which means that they can offer an individualized treatment plan for each client they work with. We know what works for some may not work for others, and we will adapt to meet your needs. We also offer support groups and educational workshops. This is another level of support and a place for connection for survivors.
Many people are unsure of what an advocate can do. An advocate's role is to meet a survivor where they are at in their healing journey and walk alongside them, providing empathy, support, and connection to resources. We truly believe survivors are the expert in their own life, and our role is to be there to support you and your self-defined needs. We know navigating multiple systems can be very difficult. That is why we are here to help. We have designed our space at the Center for Survivors with you in mind. We even have a private interview room where you can make a report to law enforcement. Some common things advocates assist survivors with include: if a survivor decides to report to the university and/or to law enforcement, advocates are available to go to these meetings as a confidential support to the survivor. Advocates can also assist survivors with safety planning, accessing accommodations, housing concerns, and much more. Another feature of our advocacy team is our claimant advisors. Center for Survivors claimant advisors are available to assist survivors through the formal grievance process through MSU's Office for Civil Rights. We also have volunteer advocates who will respond to the MSU Sexual Assault Healthcare Program to provide confidential crisis intervention to survivors at the healthcare program. We don't expect survivors to know everything they need. If you are unsure, please reach out. We would love to connect with you and talk through your options in a confidential setting.
In addition to our counseling and advocacy services, if you are in need of immediate support, we have a 24-hour crisis hotline available at 517-372-6666 and our daily 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. crisis chat, which is available on our website. Our trained sexual assault crisis intervention volunteers are able to discuss feelings related to sexual assault and sexual harassment, help connect you to campus and community resources, and provide information about program services. Our trained sexual assault crisis intervention volunteers are willing and able to help whenever you need it.
We recognize that healing after a traumatic event can take many forms, and that taking care of ourselves can be difficult during the healing process. Therefore, we have built a community closet for all of our clients to access. In this closet, you will find things such as personal hygiene items, self-care items, and food that are free for all of our clients. It takes a community of support, and we are here to support you.
Thank you for taking the time to learn more about the Center for Survivors. We are here and ready when you need us.
And you can actually move it right on to the next slide. We can keep going. So that is just to give you an idea of the comprehensive services that Center for Survivors offer. The MSU Sexual Assault Response Team is housed within Center for Survivors, and so we'll talk about that in the next few slides and the work that the East Lansing Police Department is doing with our SART. But just to give you the depth of our work, so in the last academic year, we served 935 individuals. 605 of those people were advocacy clients, so that could be reporting to police, to the university, different needs like that. And 379 clients were in therapy. If you click, some quotes will come up from clients. You can do 3 clicks, yep, and one more. And so it says, trying to read that and have this microphone. It has shown me that there is a huge community here of people who care about me and my well-being and have my best interest at heart. My therapist helped me transform the way I think about myself as well as the way I thought about my past self. I held on to a lot of guilt and self-judgment, but therapy helped me gain positive view of myself. I felt very safe knowing I had so much support from Center for Survivors, my therapist, my advocate, and university resources. It helped me feel less alone and kept me hopeful. And our SART is a big part of this work that we are doing with survivors. Go to the next slide, please.
And we're not going to play the
Yeah,
video.
you can keep on clicking.
Okay, I can just talk about what's in the video. So again, I work at the Sexual Assault Healthcare Program. We are open 24/7. There's a nurse on site to provide free and confidential health care to anyone that's experienced a sexual assault in the last 5 days. We are a community resource, and we also see the MSU community as well. So anyone that is 18 years and older, we can see. We usually say like the Tri-County area. But honestly, if anyone comes to us 18 years and older, we're able to provide services completely free. And then we can also provide transportation to and from, because that has been seen as one of those barriers why someone might not seek health care after an assault, is they can't get there or they can't get home. So we can help provide transportation. And we'll go on to the next one. So we provide trauma-informed care to each and every patient, meaning the choice and the options of services are going to be left up to the patient. So we're not going to force them into doing something that they don't want. We're going to empower them to make those decisions. We'll see one patient at a time, and we'll connect each patient with an advocate who can provide confidential resources, and then through Center for Survivors, as Lauren talked. So in the middle picture is our exam room. Privacy is huge, along with the confidentiality. So we have an electronic medical record charting system that's not connected to any of the other healthcare charting systems, so that other providers won't know if a patient was seen at our healthcare facility unless that patient decides they want to disclose to their provider. So that's another way we provide confidentiality and security, as well as ways that we provide safety around like photographs that might be taken. And then, so we are not mandated reporters. Through the structure of our program, we're a nurse-run program, which means we don't have to notify the university or in law enforcement if a patient comes out, unless Child Protective Services or Adult Protective Services needs to be called. And again, that was another barrier why people don't seek healthcare after a sexual assault, is because they might not want to partake in any criminal investigation. And so we leave that up to our patient. We explain to them now is the time to collect any evidence if you would like to, and we can store that for up to 10 years. Michigan law is to store it for 1 year, and we'll store it for up to 10 years, and that gives our patients a lot of time to decide if this is the right decision for them, because there's a lot of different decisions they will have to make. That can be re-traumatizing, and we don't want that. So we want it to fully be something that they choose to do. And then the services that we can provide is a full head-to-toe assessment, checking for any injuries. We can take a medical forensic history. We can provide medications to treat the 3 most common STIs. We can provide emergency contraception. All of our medications are, again, free. We're going to give them the entire course of treatment rather than one pill, here's a prescription, now you have to use your copay or whatnot. We'll give them everything so they can walk out and have what they need. And then, as we discussed before, we can collect DNA evidence, known as like a sexual assault kit, and we can store that for 10 years, or we could take photographs of any injuries sustained. Which again will help preserve the way things looked at the time that the patient came to see us. Is there anything else? And this slide is just showing you the difference between going to a hospital and going to our healthcare. And the biggest difference is at the hospital, patients end up waiting a long time to be seen and cleared by the emergency room, and then they have to wait for a SANE exam. So that can often be maybe 8 hours that a patient is waiting. When a patient comes to us, they'll be seen right away. And we'll see one patient at a time, so they're not sitting with a group of other people that have all different kinds of health concerns and health needs at one time.
To support this program, so you all got the condensed version. We've been kind of on a national tour talking about this. We opened the healthcare program in 2020 during the pandemic. I can never remember the exact date because that was a wild time trying to open a healthcare clinic in the middle of the pandemic. But we opened in 2020, and so our funders really believed we needed a strong community support to have this nationally recognized healthcare program. So we put into place the sexual assault response team, and we have a campus-based sexual assault response team, which formed in 2019. Our response team has a huge law enforcement presence on the team. And really, it comes down to, especially in a college town, what side of the road you're standing on when you're assaulted determines which of the 7 police jurisdictions are going to respond to you. And we really believe every survivor deserves the same level of care, access to rights, and understanding of processes. So we're bringing everybody together so that we're all on the same page. One initiative that we're very proud of that the SART put into place is this trauma-informed interview room. And so this is located right in Center for Survivors. We have agreements with all of our law enforcement agencies that they are able to use this for any domestic or sexual violence victim that they will be interviewing. And we are able to do coordinated interviews. So for those who aren't familiar with how the process goes, typically when a survivor is wanting to report, their first contact may be road patrol, may be someone who's never been trauma-informed or having training in sexual violence or anything like that. And then once they speak to road patrol, then it has to get assigned, and then the detective will reach out. And oftentimes victims and survivors are doing this alone. So we put in this coordinated interview process that we have in play to now where if we have a survivor who comes through the healthcare program, tells me they want to report, I'm able to directly reach out to East Lansing, let's say, since we're in East Lansing Police Department, to my favorite Detective McMath, and say, we have a survivor who's wanting to report. She'll say, cool, tell me when to be there. And she comes right over and meets with the survivor right in Center for Survivors and does the interview there, eliminating the need for someone to ever speak to road patrol, to go through that, I'm here, now I'm here, now I'm here. They come right into Center for Survivors, they have their advocate, they're comfortable, and we're able to get much better quality of interviews and much more trauma-informed in the process. And so this is a coordinated response that we have. We have protocols that we're putting into play to support survivors' connection to advocacy. We do shared training together. So this was a sexual assault kit initiative summit that was here, hosted right at the Graduate Hotel in East Lansing. And there in this picture, we have Grand Ledge Police Department, Ingham County Prosecutor's Office, Danielle and I, Lansing Township Police, and East Lansing Police Department Detective Christy Schwam. In that picture, all getting trained in the same techniques. We just did a non-fatal strangulation training for 75 community members right here in East Lansing, and trained so many law enforcement, prosecutors, nurses on how to respond to non-fatal strangulation. And then we do shared outreach events together. So this picture was taken at the East Lansing Police Department open house so that we can really show the community that we're a united front. It is not the police, then the prosecutor, then the advocates. We're all working together to hold offenders accountable and to support survivors in our community. Next slide, please. And so, of course, our services are amazing, and we are so honored and proud to talk about them. And we have become a nationally recognized model, and so when we were invited to come here and speak today, it was really important for us to share that with the community, to know that this is something we should be very, very proud of. If you want to go to the next slide, please. We've kind of, I joked, been on a national tour. We really have. We've spent the past year traveling around the country talking about the services that we offer. Danielle and her staff were published in the Journal of Forensic Nursing, is that correct, about this program. This is a pilot program. It's the first campus-based freestanding healthcare program in the country. And so we have a lot of experts that we consult with, that we go and talk about, and we're actively sought out after for our model and the things that we are doing. And so we're just very proud to be a part of this community and the work that we're doing. Next slide, please. And just to give a huge shout out to the East Lansing Police Department and that the work that we are doing with them, they are one of our biggest partners in this work. So as you can see, 31% of our patients who come into the healthcare program were assaulted in the East Lansing Police jurisdiction. 21% of referrals of how people hear about us, how they know about our services, come from the East Lansing Police Department out there telling people about our services. 30% of our interviews that take place in our trauma-informed interview room are conducted by the East Lansing Police Department. Primarily, Detective McMath has been a rock star and been doing a lot of these interviews. And then they've been a founding member of our SART and have been a great partner to work with.
So how to support our work: if someone discloses to you that they were sexually assaulted, believe them. That's the biggest thing you can do, is believe them. And then you can provide support if you would like to through the Survivor Emergency Fund, Survivor Care Closet, or volunteer. And then you can follow us on social media.
If you go to the next slide, it has our website and our contact information. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. If you're part of any community groups that you feel could use this information, please reach out to us. We really want to get the word out there so we can meet as most survivors' needs as possible. Thank you for having us here tonight.
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah, we just want to thank you guys for coming out tonight, and thank you to the police department. I learned about you guys this summer at the open house for both police and fire, and you were present and telling us this is one of a kind, and we just really appreciate having you in the community and the work that you're doing. Thank you. All right. Item 3.1, all written communication received by council are posted to the online agenda packet. Next up, communication from the audience. First up, Chris Young.
I'd like to thank the East Lansing City Council for the opportunity to speak tonight. For those who haven't met me, a lot of you have. My name is Chris Young. I'm a Vice President at American Community Developers. ACD is a top 30 housing developer in the United States, based out of Detroit, Michigan. We own and operate over 4,000 units in the United States, and we provide affordable homes for over 50,000 Americans. I've stated in front of a lot of the different, from the planning commissions to the DDA, about the need for affordable workforce housing here in the United States, state of Michigan, and the city of East Lansing. We've been very clear in our message, the need to bring workforce housing that is affordable to the downtown area, because it doesn't have it. We have attempted in good faith to provide the information on the proposed 530 Albert development to all the appropriate stakeholders as best as possible. We have listened to their comments and done as best as practical to incorporate them into development. And recently, last week, we did meet with the city and the engineering department in looking at how we could accommodate more parking around the actual site to include parking along the street, et cetera, and somewhere in that conversation, we met that we could probably pick up somewhere from 12 to 20 parking spots by doing that and working with them as part of the site plan development. Our proposed mixed-use development consists of 122 units with a total of 135 beds. 530 Albert helps solve the missing workforce housing need for the downtown area and surrounding area, capitalizes on the unutilized parking, and will bring new residents to the downtown East Lansing area, which we think is a huge gain for the city. The residents who will live at 530 Albert will be allowed to live, work, and play in the immediate area of East Lansing and where their jobs are located at. Typical resident could be someone that works at one of the shops along Grand River or at MSU, and currently either walks or Ubers or drives long distances to work. They will now be able to even walk now to work. To us at ACD, affordable housing is a human right. People should be able to afford to be housed in decent housing. When you have affordable housing that's decent, it makes the community more equitable and diverse. When all people are allowed to have high-quality housing that does not cost burden them and is located within the city, it provides for more diversity among the population. The 530 Albert development follows the zoning requirements and fulfills a need for the affordable housing in the city. It answers the call that has been placed by the city for affordable housing in the downtown area and aligns with the city of East Lansing master plan. It adheres to the zoning ordinances for the site. The Planning Commission and the DDA have both approved the proposed development. Our proposed development uses objective data to create a needed type housing for the East Lansing and to attract new residents and to continue to grow. It has always been our understanding as we worked with the seller of the property that, and from the past with them working with the city, that this parking lot was going away. I think a lot of the comments have been made that we're taking away parking. It was not our understanding. It was understanding that was going away, and in fact, there's a hotel planned if we do not build affordable housing there, and that is by right, we're told. At least that is our understanding. We have pledged to work with the stakeholders in the city to create a development that works and to increase as much parking as possible for the surrounding businesses of the 530 block. In summary, the proposed development meets all applicable ordinance requirements. We respectfully request that the City of East Lansing Council act tonight and approve the development. I thank you for your time. And if there's any questions that are brought up with other questions, that I'm glad to come back up, answer those questions at the end or in between, however you would like it to be, or if you have any questions of me.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for taking your time.
May I ask for the microphone to get turned up, please, for the audience? Thank you.
David, item 4.7, did you need this comment with it being forward?
I thought I could give you a break later, but I'll do it now. David Pearson on behalf of the Leo Brown Group. I'm here on 4.7, which is on your consent agenda, and I hope it stays there. to refer to Planning Commission a rezoning in order to permit an addition to the existing psychiatric facility at 3915 Coolidge Road. This is just north of the assisted living facility known as the Willows. The existing facility and what's planned here provides short-term inpatient treatment for people who otherwise live independently or in assisted living, but need up to a few weeks of inpatient psychiatric care. It's a very difficult and hard to get bed in many long-term facilities or hospitals, and the number of beds, for example, for this facility are determined by certificate of need. It is simply an addition, and the area that would be rezoned could not be used for some other use independently. It is going to be added to the existing property. We'll be back, I hope, to tell you more about it after we've been to the Planning Commission. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We're at Cedar River. Mike?
Good evening. My name is Mike Stout. I'm with Michigan Waterway Stewards. I'm the president and founder. And I'm here to speak about the enormity of the problems that we're incurring because of scooters and bicycles being tossed and abandoned into the Red Cedar River. I think you may have seen quite a bit of PR around this recently. And it's the lithium-ion powered scooters that are the greatest concern. Since December of 2022, we have personally recovered 289 scooters, about 416 scooters and bicycles, and primarily at the East Lansing Bogue Street Bridge. So you can imagine the undertaking that we've made here, but the concern we have due to the toxicity of the environment. And the reason I'm here today is to talk about the primary source, and that's spin. I know they've been recently revoked as being an operator in the city. But of the 289 scooters, based on SPIN's reporting, 259 are of SPIN. And we tried working with them beginning of January of this year, reached out to them about how we could collaborate with them, and we were met with some indifference, but that's all right. Unfortunately, they've been a little bit resistant in sharing information as we're trying to search and recover for these scooters. To gain an appreciation of others' thoughts and opinions about this matter, we conducted a consumer research in the greater Lansing, East Lansing area. 158 persons voluntarily responded, and overall feedback is as this. 94% agree strongly that they found this discovery upsetting. 96% agreed strongly that this behavior is unacceptable. 94% agreed strongly that these types of objects creates a potential environmental threat, in particular the lithium-ion powered scooters. And 94% agreed that a collaborative approach towards creating a long-term solution is desirable. Then we asked them to share any thoughts and opinions about this matter, and many chose to pile on and complain more about spin. And we can share that research with you later on if you like, but I think you're well aware of the complaints you've heard in the community about their management or lack thereof. So with your help, we're going to solve this long-standing problem. And we're talking about the spin scooters now, but tossing bicycles into our river has been going on for decades, since 1940, 1950. My father was a college student. Hopefully he didn't do it. But we're finding bicycles, the Schwinn bicycles from the 50s that are easily identifiable because of the design. Well, there are 4 steps or 4 components to our campaign: awareness, deterrence, enforcement, and retrieval. We've been focusing on retrieval because of the sense of urgency, but that's least effective, most costly, and most dangerous operation. So we need to shift towards the front and create awareness and deterrence programs. And so far, we've met with, we've had some collaborative discussions with members from the City of Lansing, City of East Lansing, the university, civic and MSU clubs, and we're creating a pretty comprehensive campaign, which our plan is to launch November 11th at the Delta Sigma Phi fraternity as they're part of our collaborative efforts to solve this problem. But there'll be a number of awareness issues that we're going to be implementing, from the signage, or recommending, be it signage and posters and table tents and pledges and stewardship campaigns and deterrence measures that we're recommending as well, such as creating safe zones to make sure that scooters aren't placed in proximity of the river. SPIN has a policy that they disallow their inventory of product within 300 feet. That's a great claim, but we know that their product is being inventoried much closer than that. So we're recommending a safe zone of 400 feet. So as we go forward here.
30 seconds remaining.
Yep. Talk about the enforcement of the ECO's safe zone. We're asking that SPIN require the loss and recovery rates by location each month. We require that any of the electric scooters, bicycles, or other modes of transportation be impounded within 2 weeks, and that they're forced to retrieve that. And we ask you here simply to support our campaign that's being launched on November 11th. That includes pledges and social media to get the messaging out. So thank you for your time, and appreciate your interest.
Thank you. Hey, Tammy, I'm going to clear the online queue if there's people in there, and then I'll come back to the in-person.
Caller with the number ending in 014, you're welcome to address council. Caller, can you unmute your phone?
He sent us an email. We got an email from him.
They've left the queue.
Was that the only person?
It is the only person.
Next up, Mike Kruger.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak here. Like I know many small business owners do, some of you included, I laid awake this morning about 3 o'clock, dwelling on a number of different things, including what, if anything, I would say to you all tonight during this time, this evening. I know that I've given my thoughts against this proposal at Planning Commission, DDA, and then to y'all in writing a couple of weeks ago. And then I also had my friend Mark here. He was kind enough to read my letter aloud since I couldn't attend the meeting. You know, this morning I laid awake thinking about money and a lot of different ways that it relates to tonight. I was thinking about how much money and time that I've spent in this town, specifically on the 500 block over the last 25 years. The Peanut Barrel isn't the first business that I've owned on this block. Back in '99, I had a record store called Vinyl Addict Records right on the corner of Division and Grand River, underneath the old State Discount Party Store. I learned the hard way how to not run a business, as I used to take all the money that I made and spend it at the Peanut Barrel. When I was done, which fortunately I've kind of come full circle on that, you know, I got all my tattoos over the years from Greg Drake over at Splash of Color. I've spent tons of money at FBC to this day. I used to spend all kinds of time at In-Flight and Bagel Fragel, Espresso Royale. Even now I'm a weekly customer, sometimes twice a week at Sushi Ya and Campbell's. And this isn't unlike many of y'all who choose to spend your money locally and support local. And then I started thinking about money this morning in the way that all of us small business owners do, because we're constantly worried about paying our staff a good wage, benefits, taxes, fixing things, making improvements, doing whatever we can to survive and thrive in this town. And then, you know, I spoke to a reporter the other day, and I started thinking about some of the comments that he had told me Chris had made, Mr. Young, who he had interviewed for a story. And he had said something to the effect of everybody's in favor of workforce housing, but nobody wants it near them. And that really pissed me off, to be frank. If that's, and I may be, paraphrasing, but regardless, it upset me and it got me to thinking, to reduce it to that is really insulting and completely missing the point. I have no doubt that Mr. Young lays awake in bed thinking about money like the rest of us. It may not be the same way that the rest of us do, or small business owners do, but the reason that many of us are not in favor of this development is that we're losing the parking, which will cause us to lose customers, which will cause us to lose money, which will cause us to lay awake even longer at night, trying to figure out how to make ends meet, not only for us, but for all of our employees and their families. It's not because we don't want it near us. We do want workforce housing near us, just not at the cost of potentially losing our customer bases and the businesses and stymieing any kind of future development that could actually help our businesses. We're essentially being asked to pony up and figure it out. ACD wants millions of dollars in tax breaks. We actually pay our taxes to the city and pay employees who contribute to the local economy. Of course, we would love to have an additional 120 people living behind us. Of course, people like Mr. Saper and many other business owners in the town are in favor of this development because it has zero effect on them negatively. All the onus is on us in the 500 block. Y'all have heard the outcry against this publicly from obviously many of us over the last couple of meetings, Planning Commission, et cetera. Not only from the business owners, but from patrons and neighbors that keep this town thriving. It's not a secret. This is the last meeting for a couple of you guys. I know that each and every one of you came to be on council because you care about the city of East Lansing. You all care about everything going on, and you're absolutely doing the best that you can to try and do what you think is best for the city. It's a damn near thankless job. Y'all don't get paid enough for it. I can't even imagine. I just ask that you listen to us and vote this down so that we can figure out something better. Thanks.
Roy Saper.
I am Roy Saper, a downtown Albert Avenue property and business owner. I am asking you to support the recommendations of your staff, the Planning Commission, and DDA, and approve the 530 Albert Avenue proposal. City staff has carefully and fully evaluated this proposal with respect to each of the factors of consideration that they are charged to study. There is no basis to reject the staff's thorough, comprehensive report, the Planning Commission's recommendation, and DDA's recommendation of support. Voting yes to this project provides increased opportunities to all downtown businesses in every block. Having 130 plus new residents in downtown is good for business and for all of East Lansing. After completed my doctoral coursework in economics at MSU, I served as director of the state's Office of Economic Forecasts. As one who has built econometric models for measuring the impact of economic changes, I feel comfortable in ensuring you that with respect to this project, the sky is not falling. There are no aspects of 500 block businesses that are predictive of failure based on reduced surface parking. As proof, there are dozens of restaurants, bars, clothing, and other stores downtown that are doing well without having surface parking out their back door. There is no proof, evidence, or study that supports a claim of business failure due to not having backdoor surface parking. Furthermore, many downtown businesses' customers walk, not drive. They're pedestrians, and that's the beauty of downtown businesses, that people can walk to their destination business and then walk by and visit other area businesses. Any longtime successful destination business in the 500 block, which thrived when there was no public parking in the 500 block, cannot honestly claim it will close if backdoor parking availability is now reduced, particularly in that there is still parking, plenty of close by surface and ramp parking. Surface parking is not a guarantee that a business will survive, as evidenced by vacant retail spaces in the 500 block right now. We certainly could use more business to occupy those vacant spaces, and that would happen when you bring in a working residential population base, which will shop downtown. Some facts. There is surface parking in the 126 Bailey Street parking garage, Lot 7. It is ground floor covered parking with plenty of meters. The entrance is directly across from the 500 Lot 11 500 block parking entrance and about 215 feet to the east side 500 block businesses. East of that is surface parking behind Cottage Inn with 15-minute free parking. And that is about a football field's length to those 500 block businesses, which is the exact same distance to those businesses as if one parked at Wild Goose Inn and walked to those businesses. There is also surface parking on the corner of Grand River and Collingwood, 300 feet from Moose Jaw. The city's east parking area in the 500 block is outside the footprint of this parking. And finally, there are parking meters along Alberton on Division. For quick drop-offs or pick-ups, perhaps a dialogue could be established with city officials permitting a pilot study of 5 or 15-minute stops in the alley or close by curb-marked spaces to help someone unload a wheelchair or travel bags or a box of records or to pick up an order. Longtime successful businesses in our downtown thrive without adjacent surface parking. People visit LS, Peanut Barrel, Lou and Harry's, Beggars, Dublin Square, Harper's, and other established businesses in our downtown because they are destinations that have developed a strong client base based on providing product, pricing, and service that matches consumer demand. Even without surface parking, if a business provides what consumers want, the customers will walk an additional 1 or 2 minutes to reach that business. MSU FCU is doing better downtown after having moved away from the 500 block. Dublin Square lost adjacent parking, surface parking, and it's still there. The Graduate Hotel was built without parking, and it's managing well. There are dozens of very successful new and long-time businesses along Albert and Grand River that operate without surface parking at their back door. The Broad Museum, in addition, attracts tens of thousands each year with no surface parking. Although there are close-by surface parking options outside this project site, nearby parking garages serve every business in our downtown. They're well-lit, they have cameras, they provide free parking for the first 15 minutes, plus the underutilized Division and Charles Street ramps provide lower parking rates than others downtown. When parking ramps are the available option, people use them, just as you and likely everyone in this room has if they've been to Kellogg Center, the Wharton Center, Sparrow Hospital, and other locations at MSU, LCC, and downtown Ann Arbor. 500 block businesses can cooperatively promote
30
themselves
seconds remaining.
through creative media applications, co-op ads, and promotional materials to welcome residents of the 500 Albert housing project. They can promote, advertise, and collaborate with the DMV to strengthen visibility, viability, and success. This project is an opportunity that benefits everyone. In closing, accept the recommendations of your staff's professional work in evaluating the 530 proposal. Help make the 500 block businesses and all businesses in downtown East Lansing attract other new businesses, particularly locally owned and operated, and strengthen our downtown as a destination for those that live there and visit from other neighborhoods. The 500 block, my last sentence, the 500 Albert Avenue project matches the master plan objectives and received your planning staff's recommendations. Approve it today to prevent the property from being idle and continue efforts in making downtown a destination for all, daytime, nighttime, anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Edmondson.
Greetings. That's a tough act to follow. Very impressive research on your part. I, too, am supporting the 530 Albert development. I've been a resident of East Lansing for 40 years. Shortly after I graduated from MSU, I moved to Denver for a while, and I have an example from a project there that I think runs a parallel based on what I just heard. In Denver, we had a neighborhood that was really bombed out. It was the poorest of the poor neighborhoods in Denver, and it was right outside of the central business district. We were able to get an Urban Development Action Grant to bring in 1,000 units of housing. And the whole scheme was to have folks be able to walk to work downtown, but also to revitalize a commercial corridor that ran right through that neighborhood. And it was going nowhere fast. But after that 1,000 units of housing came in, all of a sudden we had success. That commercial district now is one of the strongest commercial districts in the city of Denver. So I just kind of thought about that as far as you bring housing in, you bring workforce housing in, it has a lot of good spin-off benefits. I worked back in Lansing then with a nonprofit community development finance organization, and we arranged financing for a lot of affordable housing developments all over the region. We would work with banks and with insurance companies and bring them into the projects to help keep the rents affordable for lower income folks. In that capacity, I work often with ACD, the development company proposing the 530 Albert development. They are one of the best known, most respected developers in the country when it comes to affordable housing development. I speak very highly of them. I know the industry considers them to be one of the leaders. We do know that the Affordable Housing Tax Credit Program does not provide for renting to students for the most part. There are a few exceptions where, like a single parent or somebody is taking part-time classes and working, they might be able to, but it's not student housing. And it won't be student housing for over 30 years. So the concern that this is just going to be another apartment complex that starts out with the stated intentions and then flips to something else, which is student housing, is not going to happen. ACD is not committed to that, and the program itself doesn't allow for that. So I don't think that that's going to be a problem. I do think that the fact that this development will bring in over 120 residents, and it will support the local businesses, and it will provide workforce housing is something that the city truly needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Monson?
Good evening. All right, I'm going to try something different tonight. I'm going to try and speak truth to power. First of all, ACD is not here to help our community. They are here to make money. I don't have a problem with that, to be honest with you. Mostly ACD rehabs existing buildings in lower income urban areas where affordable housing is needed, and they do not generally build mid-rise buildings from the ground up. Their website is indicative of this. Trying to put a 120-unit building on a 0.7-acre lot is significantly outside of the normal 1 acre per 100-unit minimum standard, and the edge-to-edge design is bad judgment. Second, East Lansing is not a walking town, and it never will be. It's a 3-mile strip with residential backed up 1 to 2 blocks off the main strip with no businesses integrated into the neighborhoods. People not having a need for cars if they live in this project is a misguided premise, which is exactly why the developer is asking for 130 parking spaces for 30 years at half price. He knows parking is not only required for his building to be occupied, he knows that there's not enough parking in East Lansing, 220 less spaces if this goes forward. Third, while certain locals give lengthy dissertations on the economic bliss to be brought by this development, it is not based on reality. Adding 130 new residents to East Lansing's permanent population of 18,000 will have no measurable positive impact on commerce. That's demonstrated by the apartments that were put in where this Albert Street development already is planned to go. It didn't have much effect on those businesses in a positive manner. So they have a legitimate concern about losing parking relative to their customer flow. Conversely, we had a nationally recognized economist submit his spin on this development on October 3rd, and his idea is businesses in the 500 block will be severely impacted and many will fail. Speaking of damage, let's talk about long-term damage. Loss of business in the most vibrant, diverse part of town, many of them minority-owned. The loss of meaningful development in the 400, 500, and 600 blocks for decades. Breach of trust with the constituents of East Lansing who are firmly opposed to this project, a project that they will have to pay for with pilot funding, reduced tax revenues, and millions of dollars in public grants. And contrary to what we heard, there has not been a study by the city of East Lansing of any meaningful, comprehensive fact. We know this for a fact. We asked for that study. We asked for economic impact and tax impact documents. Several people at the City Hall today valiantly tried to provide that information, which arrived at 10 till 5 today and was filled with errors. So I don't know what we're talking about here when we talk about a thorough study. So why would the city approve this? The number of concessions and subsidies involved and the many variances from the spirit of the city master plan beg this question be asked. This proposal won't create diversity with any guarantee. It won't create retail traffic for downtown, and it won't create adequate tax revenue. But it will affect the evolution of those 3 blocks for 30 years. Workforce housing can be affordable without collateral damage to existing businesses and can pay taxes at rate. It can open the door to more diversity. So why this? Without the pertinent research and the studies to back it up, the people and the businesses in this city are not going to support this. It will go to litigation.
30 seconds remaining.
And it will move towards referendum, as is our right. The city belongs to the people that live here. We appreciate the work that the people at the city council have done, and we applaud the fact that they have tried to deal with this issue. This just isn't it. There is better options and better opportunities that are out there, and we need to work towards making those happen, and maybe even with this developer. But this location is a killer. I urge the council to vote against this proposal. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Jeff Hank?
Good evening, council, and thank you. I'm Jeffrey Hank. I'm a resident of the Bailey neighborhood, and I stand with the 1,000-plus people that signed a petition opposing this project, all of the adjacent property owners who oppose this project, and the 20 or so business owners that surround this project who also oppose it. I have heard, I think, 4 people say they support this. That's 0.3%. 0.3, not even 0.5% of the people have expressed an opinion in support of this. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of reasons to oppose this project, and there's one to support it, and that's workforce housing. And everybody has said who's opposed this project that we support workforce housing. In fact, we've supported the Bailey neighborhood at the Bailey Community Center. But the Bailey Neighborhood Association has also come out in opposition to this project. So you've got everybody around here who is opposed to this project. And unlike one of the supporters I've heard, this absolutely has not been thoroughly vetted, and that's been part of the frustration. And I want to thank the city manager for trying to get some information to me today, and I want to thank Tim Dempsey, and particularly David Lee in the assessor's office, who helped to walk through some of the information, because we know that up until today, there's been no financial analysis done of this project by the city. It's unfathomable that you would review a $35 million project and not do a financial analysis of that on the city and the tax impact that's not how you do business. Nobody would build a $35 million building that is only worth $15 million unless you had money to burn. This city doesn't have money to burn, not our taxpayer money to burn. The workforce housing, 120 units, 130 beds, whatever exactly it is not worth losing. The number we think is between $7 and $15 million. $7 and $15 million East Lansing residents are going to give up for this project that everybody practically is against. Now, some of us were writing checks yesterday for the city income tax and probably asking ourselves, our families are hurting from inflation, from gas, from health care, from tuition, from taxes, from groceries, from child care. We want affordable housing. And we don't want to pay a corporate developer our money to build something in our neighborhood that we don't want. So if you pass this tax incentive for this project, we are going to referendum it. I don't think there's been a referendum done on an ordinance in East Lansing. Maybe the city clerk can tell us. In my recollection either. But it's going to happen for the first time because people are that upset, and we're going to do it. But we hope we don't have to. and I hope you continue to listen to people here. So, again, I appreciate these memorandums being put together today, and I don't have time to go through them here tonight, and neither do you, which is part of the reason that an action shouldn't be taken on this project tonight. Mr. Lee's very helpful assessment, I can tell you, has got wrong rent numbers on it. It's got 10 extra units. That values the property at $7 million, the assessed value. So it's approximately a $14 million project. In what world would you build spend $35 million for something that's only worth 14? Again, you got to have money to burn. So be a good steward of taxpayer money, because all of us are affected by that, not just the people in this block who are going to be seriously affected by that. And you can hear their passion when they come to speak against it. Mr. Dempsey's memo, I think, is a little more thorough and is along the line of where we need to go, but this needs to be more thoroughly vetted. You shouldn't make a decision that's uninformed and without looking at these numbers more closely. There are multiple considerations from losing parking revenue to not, but even Mr. Dempsey's estimate is just doing the project at a minimum, we lose $500,000. Maybe if you do it at market rate, it looks like it's hard to say, but it's at least losing $7 million, and some people think that's 15. I don't know. And I'm guessing none of you know exactly, because you haven't had the chance to vet this either, because it was just put together today, which is a start, but that's not a thoroughly vetted project. I don't have much time. I drove down Division today. There was 4 cars parked there at the Panda Express blocking traffic. That same thing's going to happen here unless that design is in there. We know for a fact, data, that Blue Owl Coffee's closing because of parking. We know Mackerel Sky closed because of parking and construction. We know Taco Bell had problems with that. Now Moose Jaw's going out of business. So you've got reasons in the code to vote against this. Section 59.4, this is not in the interest of the community as a whole. It's not in the interest of the adjacent properties. It will cause them economic damage. Section 59.4, A4, A6, A7 are all reasons to do it. Your future opportunities for developing this area, you're going to have to put parking into the neighborhoods. This is not a long-term planning. This is not how we should do business. And I really encourage you to take the time to get this right, to get community input, to do this in a way that's not going to damage all these people who care about it, that can bring workforce housing in downtown. We don't have to lose the parking. We can save open space for cultural events, for the art fair, the jazz fest, all these things that we lose by rushing this opportunity that we have here. And I highly encourage you all to vote against this. I think I voted for everybody up here except for Mr. Garcia, who's I'm going to probably vote for this time because he's against the project. So I got to tell you, people support all you and are appreciative of you, but they're not happy about this issue, and they're not going to be happy if you vote for it. So I encourage you to do the right thing. Deny this project. If you're not going to deny it, you got to table it and put some more thought into it. We can't as a city afford to do development projects without vetting the finances. We have to have learned the lesson from that. Please, I beg you, if you're not aware of the development history in the city and what it's cost this city and our pension debt and all this, you have to think about that. It's the right and responsible thing to do. Thank you very much.
Andy Drahan.
Good evening. Thanks for this opportunity to speak, and thanks to all of you for serving as a husband of a former city council person. I know that these kind of moments in your tenure on city council are stressful and take up a lot of time and emotional energy. It breaks my heart to disagree with the peanut barrel community, and I trust that the city will pull out all the stops to support these, the great businesses in that block, which is my favorite block in our downtown and has been since I was a student here in the 80s and 90s, to support those businesses in weathering the storm of construction and coming out on the other end and thriving as they are today. But for my values and views of this community, I think we should be celebrating this project as a gift-wrapped opportunity to add diverse residential options and affordable workforce housing to our downtown. And my math, when I look at this, vastly differs from what I've heard tonight, because I also see this as an opportunity to bring new streams of revenue into our coffers each year that we can invest in other needs and priorities that our community values. For those who disagree, I hope we're at least clear-headed about the choice we're making. Because as I see it, the only way that this lot remains in surface parking into the future is for the city of East Lansing to make a really foolish real estate investment and purchase it. The East Lansing families who own that property, and as I understand it, have been discussing with the city for something like 3 decades, plans to redevelop that site, have sought and secured 8 bids for the lot. They have selected a proposal that's consistent with our zoning and our master plan, and they have every legal right to sell their property, and we have no reasonable grounds to not deny them that right. There's been a lot of bluster and chest pounding in the city council campaign about eminent domain. There is no tool at our disposal to force those families to sell that property at a cut rate. Even under eminent domain, we have to justly compensate them for their property. And that means paying fair market value for prime real estate in our downtown that's in high demand. Remember, they got 8 bids for that property. And so assuming that the city, and all of you would know, doesn't have that kind of money kicking around in our coffers, to purchase that lot, we'd have to borrow it. And we'd probably have to pay 3-4% in interest year after year on millions of dollars of debt to own that lot. And given the fact that the city has already determined that the revenue from that lot doesn't justify continuing our lease on it, this is a recipe for perpetual debt and loss. So if we're gonna consider killing this proposal because we think it's going to remain a surface parking lot, I think we're fooling ourselves. And instead of, what we'll really be doing is we'll be trading this opportunity for workforce housing in our downtown for a hotel or more student apartments, the other bids that are in the queue. Finally, and this is something I feel strongly about, if we're proud of our history on housing in this community, we shouldn't be. I live in a neighborhood that is still trying to get rid of a racist, restrictive covenant on our books. So we still have a restrictive covenant on our community, and we have policies now that allow entire neighborhoods, even those that are far removed from campus and student housing, to essentially say no to renters. So if we continue policies like that and we say no to projects like this, we are essentially saying no to people without capital in our neighborhoods, and we're saying no to working people in our downtown. And I can't think of too many things we're doing to say yes to low-income people in our community anywhere else. So I hope you'll support this project, approve it. It makes financial sense for our community. It avoids making a big mistake on a real estate investment, and it reflects our values as a community as I see them. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mark?
Good evening. My name is Mark Collins, and I was the former staff member for the United States Congressman Bob Carr for 8 years. And I can tell you, during that 8 years, I saw many situations just like this one. Many times there were ideas that were good and started out as good intentions, but they just didn't bear out the results that we hoped for. I don't think this project began with any ill intent. It just didn't work out that way. as some thought it would. No one denies that we need affordable housing and increased diversity in East Lansing. But we can't do that to the detriment of the rest of the businesses in the 400 to the 600 block and their financial stability of the city itself. This project is a square peg in a round hole. No studies or declaration of social benefits are going to change that. The proposal is too costly for the city and its taxpayers. There's too much collateral damage to the surrounding businesses and the property owners. And it's not affordable for the demographics that we're trying to reach. Do a simple household budget of $40,000 a year after taxes, and it becomes very clear that this is not going to work. Also, there's no guarantee that the diversity will be achieved in this plan. This is an idea that just didn't pan out. We should applaud the attempt, and I hope we can try again without the acrimony and bad feelings. The proper action here is to just move on, try to find a better fit for this space, and try to find a better location for workforce housing. It's just that simple. Any alternative will be very disheartening. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh Ramirez Roberts.
Hi there. Thank you guys for your time. Just briefly, just since it came up, I want to talk a little bit about the overlay districts for just a second. We've allowed rental property owners to buy up all the available affordable housing in our community, essentially, and left us scrounging for scraps. And the overlay districts help to ensure that there is capital remaining for the rest of us. So I would just like to say that in terms of affordability. But also when we're talking about parking, because I really do want to talk about the parking. It seems, at least in the presentations that I saw, especially early on in this project, and especially since we have to remember that it was the city who really pursued not continuing the lease on this lot, that the main drive was that they wanted to force parking into our other garages to increase revenue. And yet now we're considering, and there's a pretty good chance they'll get it, of getting half off that parking. The whole impetus for this project that was meant to put money into our other garages, and now we're losing millions of dollars on that. And I don't know about you, but I think a lot of city programs would really like that money. I think they could really use that money. I think our fire and police could really use that money. I think our pension debt could use that money. And why are we doing this? Why are we taking this risk? Just because they said pretty please very nicely? Is that the way we approach these agreements, these discussions? And then also, I do want to talk about, the lack of procedure that has followed this project since its inception. And I think the lack of an apology that the residents of the city have received for the complete lack of transparency, especially how it took us over a year to find out about this project, how the property owners weren't notified until the public was, how all of this is just opening us up to lawsuits no matter what happens. And then another thing that, quite thirsty right now, but we have to think about Section 594 that Jeff Hanks mentioned, and I know Ed Wagner mentioned at the Planning Commission meeting, Commissioner Wagner, and it was essentially brushed over. The damage to surrounding properties in terms of economic viability. It's the city's duty to produce a concrete economic report to help prevent itself from being liable in either side of this lawsuit, because another thing we've done is invited a litigious company, a known litigious company, into our community that if we deny their project, will sue. They have a history of doing this and they have a history of winning, and we would lose. And then also, when looking at the pilot and the parking, have we taken a look at ACD's finances to really confirm that they need this, that this is what they need to make sure that this project is viable? Or are they just asking us for whatever we'll give them and taking as much as they can? I just want to say that the way that this has been handled by the city has essentially opened us up to a lawsuit, no matter which way we vote, no matter which way you guys vote. And there needs to be some real soul searching when pursuing future projects. Thank you.
Al Bay.
I'm Al Bay. I live at 512 Albert, otherwise known as the Wild Goose Inn, which is a property that's adjacent to the proposed property. I live on the property on the west side of the proposed development. I guess the 20-some years ago, the city of East Lansing made a determination. The Habit Trail was up, and they made a determination that there was insufficient parking in the 500 block. This is 25 years ago. And demand for parking at our end of the town is only going to increase from this point on. We have a one-story building, the student bookstore on Grand River, on the north side of this of the Habit Trail. The south side of the Habit Trail. On the north side, we have residential buildings, single-family home, and duplexes. There is going to be a demand, and any decision you make, you should be really thinking of the future of our city. So there is going to be a demand for parking. And 25 years ago, when the city they must have studied exactly what we needed in the 500 block, and they made a determination that we needed parking 25 years ago in the 500 block. They went to the Metzgers. They asked them to demolish their rental properties there so that they could fulfill that need. The need still exists. What is going to happen is, if this proposal goes through, the things that will happen for sure are this. Number one, we'll lose the 80-some spaces that this new development will sit on. We will lose an additional 120 spaces that the developers have asked for to provide parking for the tenants. So we will be losing at this end of town the equivalent of 2 Bailey Street lots, almost. I'm all for affordable housing. I'm all for housing in the downtown. I would encourage it, but not to the detriment of businesses in the downtown. And I'm convinced that for you to reduce the available parking in the 500 block by over 200 spaces. And what happens when you rent parking spaces to people? For example, the city, they rented spaces in the Bailey Street lot, I think 30 or so. And so what happens is those spaces, even if they're not filled, they keep them empty. So I would have guests coming in and looking for a place to stay, a park. They couldn't park there because the lot was full. They say, but there's 30 spaces here. But then I went to the city, there's 30 empty spaces there, and yet it says the lot's full. What's up? Well, those are spaces that we've rented out, and even though they're not full, we have to keep them empty. So when you rent spaces in this lot, 120 spaces, even if they're not filled, they're going to be kept empty. So there will be truly a reduction in 2026 of 200 parking spaces at our end of town, and we cannot afford to have that happen. The only other thing I would mention is I did attend the DDA meeting in which the presenters
30 seconds remaining.
gave their presentation as far as their parking study was concerned. And the guy that gave the presentation was asked point blank by Mike Kruger, should there be a reduction in parking in any of downtown East Lansing? Should we reduce any of the available parking? He said, no, absolutely not. I agree with him. We can't afford this. It'll really detrimentally impact our businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra Seaton.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Seaton. I'm a longtime resident of East Lansing and one of the founding members of the East Lansing Education Foundation. Having served as an officer of many parent organizations at East Lansing schools, I have a number of concerns about the proposed 530 Albert housing development. Whether we call it low-income or affordable housing, my concerns are the same. The children, whether preschool, K-12, or K-12, must be considered. I grew up on the west side of Chicago and saw the problems families faced when they tried to meet their family needs in large apartment complexes. I would like to know if this development will be open to individuals with young children. We've heard a lot about parking needs. What about the needs of young children for a playground area? Such an area is non-existent in this apartment complex. Will young children end up playing in the halls? I have seen that scenario so many times when I was growing up. Clearly, there is no place for them to play outside in downtown East Lansing. I'm also concerned about families with teenagers. We know what the area is like in downtown East Lansing at night. The last thing we need is minors, I'm talking about high school age, exposed to activities meant for college students. If there are minors in these buildings whose parents might be at work, the East Lansing nightlife, along with other challenges, will be a magnet for these young people. In closing, before our city council signs on to this housing complex proposal, there are many concerns that still need to be addressed. If they can't be addressed this evening, then the council is not ready to consider this proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jeff Horan.
Thank you for letting me speak. I voiced my opposition to this development at the October 3rd meeting, primarily due to lack of parking requirement for the tenants and the fact that the development would eliminate the parking. It's clear with 1,000 signatures and a unanimous opposition from the business owners, it's clear that the community is not in favor of this development. I still believe that as a condition, if you were to approve this, there should be a requirement of the developer to incorporate parking in the design of the building. And I assume if you're going to discount 130 spaces dedicated to this development in the parking ramp, that same discount would be available to all the businesses in the 500 block, so that they could provide, validating parking for their customers and their employees. And also, if it does get approved, under no circumstances should you be using the remaining third of the lot that should remain, that the city plans on keeping for surface parking as a staging area to eliminate that parking for 2 years during construction. So I still feel I'm opposed to this project unless they change the design of this building to accommodate the parking. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, public comment?
Apologize for not filling out a card. I was at work. My name is Jack McDermott. I live at 1100 Weber. That's my residence. My home is at 521 East Grand River, also known as the Peanut Barrel. When I heard about this project for the Bailey lot, I began working with SEPA to try to stop it. We talked to neighborhood associations, business owners, real estate owners, and many people in the community. We canvassed door to door, we started a website, and we reached out to MSU alumni, past residents, and former downtown employees. We went to planning commissions, too many planning commissions, development authority meetings, and football games. We started a petition, and this is what we found. This community is strong. The people who live here and went to school here and worked here care. They want the best for the city, and they are united against us in this proposal. The 900 plus signatures we collected are not just names on pieces of paper. They are the will of the people you represent. And frankly, people don't understand why this rush to support this proposal. They don't understand why the city would give up the tax revenues that more appropriate developments would provide, or why the city would choose a project that so severely impacts the businesses that are there. They are mad. It's evident in this room tonight. We feel they are not being heard. I am encouraged by the time I spent meeting in this community and listening to what they have to say. I am encouraged by their unity in opposing this development, and I'm hopeful for the future of this city. And I am hopeful that you, our representatives, will really hear what we are saying and will act on our behalf. We don't want this project at this location. It hurts too many businesses and it's too expensive for taxpayers and will affect how the city evolves for decades to come. And it does not provide a guarantee for increased diversity. It's time to recognize that this is a bad deal for East Lansing and for the people who live here. Do not approve this project. The sooner it's off the table, the sooner we get to work for better solutions for this city. And I also saw something last night on the Channel 6 News. It was about a bait and switch that they tried to pull at the Landmark. Someone signed up for a rent for a $875 apartment, and they switched them to a higher rate of $950 for a two-bedroom apartment. So it turns out downtown East Lansing has affordable housing anyway. $950 for a two-bedroom apartment. That's less than what they're asking for an efficiency in this proposed building. Vote no on this building. Thank you.
Public comment?
Hi, guys. Greg Ballin. I happen to be a property owner and run the student bookstore in East Lansing. Last night I was sitting down trying to write something to speak before you, and the more I wrote, the more angry I got, and I don't want to be another angry person standing in front of you today because I don't think you deserve that. I'm against this project for all the reasons that everybody said here, and it just comes back to parking. If we had a parking component in this affordable housing project, I would be in full support of it, but it doesn't. So please vote no. Thank you.
State your name for the record.
Richard Gray. I apologize for not doing a card. I didn't know that was a thing till I came tonight. I'm actually not going to talk about parking. I'm going to talk about this plan. Just sounds familiar to me. I think that affordable workforce housing is a wonderful idea. I think it's something the city needs. But it raises great concerns because over recent years, since the city started expanding, developing, we keep hearing about companies that are going to put good things in. We heard about Convexity that was going to build affordable housing. They didn't. I know that land has now been transferred to another developer. I'm not intimately familiar with the workings. I hope something comes of that, but it hasn't so far. River Caddis was going to build office space that we needed at the Citadel. After they got their extensions, they decided that they didn't like the location. They said nothing would work other than a student housing tower. That deal ended up being allowed to expire. And then we had Harbor Bay, who was going to build senior housing at Newman Lofts until they started renting units to people under 55 and said the agreement they'd agreed to was ambiguous. Those rentals were allowed to continue for the natural life of the lease, and the deal now says that at least one 55 or older person must be on the lease, with no guarantee that it's their primary residence, or even, I don't believe that they live there at all, opening the door for it to be a parent or a grandparent of a student on the lease. I looked at their website today, and while it does say senior housing, they also heavily advertise amenities like the clubhouse, the business center, the cabana, the ability to choose your own roommates. I also found a letter from the owners or developers to their residents explaining why, in their effort to have open housing for all seniors, they didn't consider things like grab bars, handrails, extra lighting to be important for the seniors that they rent to. With all due respect to the current developers, who I don't know, this deal just honestly scares the heck out of me because I'm hearing that we're going to have affordable housing at the cost of decreased parking. I lied, I'm going to talk about parking a little. Decreased parking, discounts on parking, which will reduce income to the city, which, as others have mentioned, we can't afford. Tax incentives, and I just wonder how long before we hear that it turns out the plan wasn't actually feasible, but we found this loophole that's going to let us build what we want now that we have the deal on the space. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment? Hearing, seeing none. Move on to communications from Mayor and Council. Councilperson Garcia.
I take it we can make our comments on this when it comes to the agenda. Okay, yeah. No, I have no comments.
Councilperson Brookover.
Nothing, thank you.
Councilperson Watson.
Hi, everybody. I missed the last meeting, but I was able to listen to public comment. And so I appreciate the different perspectives and points of views as we try to make a good decision. I also wanted to give a little sidebar to people that the camera sometimes catches phones and computers, so just kind of, if you're sitting in that area, be aware when things are live or even during Zoom calls and the owls and stuff, that it can sometimes catch what's on your computer or what's on your phone when you're doing that. So the next thing I wanted to just mention is deer season. There's more deer that are coming out soon and that we'll see soon. I'm glad that legally we're not supposed to be holding our phones anymore, and so hopefully that limits the amount of texting and preoccupation that's done, but just, keep your eyes open because the deers are coming out again. Yeah, and that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm good tonight, thanks.
Kind of just a singular comment. Obviously, this is rivalry week, something that's been prepared for, and I know Chief and Chad Pride and all the business owners in the community are prepared for whatever, and plus our conversations with Michigan State, and just know that we've had in-depth conversations around public safety, around the types of activities that tend to take place, and we're going to definitely do everything in our power to curtail some of those activities that are, just stuff. It's a night game for anyone who's not paying close attention, so it's 7:30 game, which means kind of a late start to tailgating, which usually leads to a very late night in the city. and just know that logistics and the planning are in place in cooperation with Michigan State, local law enforcement, and all of our partners in preparation for that. But also, you know, to the best of your ability, be diligent around this kind of stuff. We're hoping most of it's harmless fun, but obviously a lot of different people in town in those types of things. And I'll just say, everyone just kind of be aware of your surroundings and things around you during that. When the city kind of swells to hundreds of thousands of people, things can get a little dicey. So we're hoping for a good outcome, but I don't really know what that is sometimes as mayor. I don't know if a win or a loss or what's superior for public safety and those types of things, but we'll hope for a good, safe outcome and just a really fun weekend around the rivalry, and we'll go forward from there. But definitely be comfortable to communicate with public safety and law enforcement if there's anything that seems unsavory or out of place in those things, and just keep us abreast, and we are aware, and we'll be very diligent around this weekend. So looking forward to Michigan State, but we're also prepared for as much as you can be for that type of event. So next up, city manager's report.
Just a couple items. First, to echo what you just completed, is a plea to the residents and our guests to celebrate responsibly this weekend during the MSU U of M football game. Secondly, just want to give a thank you to Annette Irwin, Housing and University Relations Administrator, for the hard work she did to make sure the Safe Halloween event application made it to tonight's agenda. So thank you.
City Attorney's report.
Good evening, Council. I just wanted to provide an update regarding the spin scooter situation that was spoken of actually during public comment. In order to operate electric scooters within the city, companies have to be licensed through the clerk's office. Spin was or is currently licensed. City staff recently became aware of several concerns, including environmental threats, as referenced by Mr. Stout from the Michigan Waterway Stewards. Additionally, some mobility concerns as a result of their failure to pick up the scooters at night, leaving them crossing sidewalks and impairing some abilities to use those sidewalks, and then non-compliance with some other reporting requirements regarding the status of the scooters and their location at all times. As a result, under the ordinance, the city manager does have the authority to revoke the license, and so did. They did file a notice of appeal, and so the appeal is pending. As soon as we have the hearing on that, a hearing officer has been appointed, then the scooter license will be permanently revoked from Spin Scooters. So I expect that to happen within the coming month or so.
Thank you.
I do have one question for the city attorney, if you don't mind. On item 4.2 concerning Miss Day's 80th birthday, bless her soul, I hope I get to be 80, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. But it's agended as resolution, which has a very specific meaning under our charter, but it looks to me like it's actually a proclamation. Shouldn't that actually, Mr. City Attorney, be a proclamation?
I'm pulling up the item right now. Yeah, the item is a proclamation, so it is incorrectly referenced on the agenda.
So, Mayor, could we just change that to approve a proclamation? 4.2.
Yeah, accept the amendment.
Thank you.
Is that what, we need to vote on that? You're going to accept?
Yeah, so we need to vote on that as an amendment to the consent agenda.
Okay. Second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. City Attorney, were you all set?
Yes.
Okay. The consent agenda?
There are 10 items on tonight's consent agenda. 4.1 is to approve the following appointments or reappointments to boards or commissions. First one is Collin Naylor to the University Student Commission for a full term ending September 30th, 2024. Reappointment of Jack Behan to the University Student Commission for a full term ending September 30th, 2024. Appoint Paige Baisley to the University Student Commission for a full term ending September 30th, 2024. To reappoint Thomas Rabout to the University Student Commission for a partial term ending December 31st, 2023. To reappoint Aaron Martino to the University Student Commission for a partial term ending December 31st, 2023. To appoint Abigail Biles to the University Student Commission for a full term ending September 30th, 2024. To appoint Nicholas Sim Prefontaine to the University Student Commission for a full term ending September 30th, 2024. And to appoint John Caserata to the University Student Commission for a full term ending September 30th, 2024. And I apologize if I slaughtered any of the aforementioned names. 4.2 is to approve the proclamation honoring Jacqueline Day's 80th birthday. 4.3 is to approve the 2024 East Lansing City Council meeting schedule. 4.4 was moved down to 5.5, I believe. 5.4 under the business agenda. 4.5 is to approve a contract for $38,176,000 with GFL Environmental for repairs to city-owned property at 405 Grove Street, and to authorize the city manager to sign. Furthermore, to approve a project contingency of up to $3,800 for this project. 4.6, approve a contract with Telesystems in the amount of $93,484.69 for AV technology upgrades to the executive conference room at the Hannah Community Center, and authorize the city manager to sign. Also, further to approve a project contingency of $9,300. 4.7 is to introduce and refer to the Planning Commission Ordinance 1527, a request from George Ide Family LLC and Leo Brown Group LLC to rezone 2.29 acres parcel adjacent to 3512 Coolidge Road from A. DeWitt Township Agricultural to B1 General Office Business District. 4.8 is to approve a letter of support to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation for 333 Valley Court, formerly 341 through 345 Evergreen Avenue, for a redevelopment project for the purpose of securing a community revitalization program loan for PK companies. 4.9 is approve a street closure for request for Mack Avenue from Bertram Drive to just south of Linden Street from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Thursday, October 26, 2023, for the Michigan State University Fraternity Sorority Life's Safe Halloween event. And 4.10 is set a public hearing for November 28th, 2023 City Council regular meeting to consider a site plan and special use permit for the proposed reconstruction of a gas station at 100 East Saginaw Street. And 4.11 is to appoint Caleb Sherrow, parking administrator to the University Place Associates Condominium Association, the Albert Place Condominium Association, and the Albert Avenue Tower Condominium Association boards, and designate Sarah Cheesebro, Deputy Parking Administrator, to serve as an alternate.
I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Moved by Councilperson Brookover, second by Mayor Pro Tem Gregg. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda carries. Next up, item 5.1, consideration of a request for 530 Albert 2023 LLC for site plan and special use permit approval for the property at 530 Albert Avenue. The proposed application would construct a 5-story building with 122 units of affordable rental housing and approximately 1,100 square foot of commercial space. And the 0.68 acre size lot is Zone B3, City Center Commercial District.
Good
Good evening, City Council. Tim Dempsey, Director of Planning, Building, and Development. So I'll walk through the project this evening, give you a high-level overview of what it consists of, summarize the DDA and Planning Commission actions, and then obviously answer any questions that you have with regard to any of the elements. I'm going to share my screen here so we can use the graphics here. So that's going to come up. Great. Alrighty. Bear with me a second here. So this is the proposed site of the development project. At the north end of the site, it's bounded by Albert Avenue. On the east side is the Bailey lot. So the site itself is highlighted here in red. That would be the privately owned portion where the project would be constructed. The Bailey lot to the east of that, that is the portion that the city owns and acquired for the expansion of that lot back in 2007, 2008. The east side, we have Bailey Street. Across the street, as was mentioned earlier, but I think by a couple speakers, is the Bailey Garage. This is a two-level garage that has parking on the lower level that is available for the public. There's also some permits in that level. And then the second level is fully dedicated to the tenants of that condominium project. The project's bounded on the south by the alleyway, which extends from Division on the west to Bailey on the east. West of the site is the Wild Goose Inn, as we heard from Mr. Bay, who owns that. And then there's two multifamily residential properties to the west. Actually, one multifamily, one single family, but both residential. And then the Division Garage across the street from there. As we know, there's multiple retail uses along Grand River to the south side of the alleyway. And then there's also the north-south alleyway that runs on the eastern third of the block. The project itself, just to give an orientation before we look at a layout. So this is the project here at the center. It's essentially a reverse U as you sort of look at it from the south perspective. The gray area to the east, of course, is the lot, and then the building itself. It's a 5-story structure. This is the first floor layout of the property. Sort of the salmon-colored would be the non-residential components, and then the green, the yellow, and the blue are the different apartments. The project, as I mentioned, is a 5-story project. It has 50 studio apartments, which would be the green apartments that you see. The yellow apartments would be the 2-bedroom. There's 62 2-bedroom units. And then there's 62 one-bedroom units. Those are the 1-bedroom. And then the sort of light blue, those would be the 2-bedroom units, and there's 10 of those. On the first floor, the front end on the north side would have the management office and the lobby of the building. You would have a back maintenance room as well that would go out to the maintenance yard with a dumpster. There's a commercial space on the east end along the alley side of the project. And then there's the community room that's on the south side of that as well. You have the outdoor activity area, kind of in that area that's protected by sort of the U shape of the building, and that would be fronting the alleyway. Our next image here is going to show the floors 2 through 4. So they all have the same layout in terms of bedroom mix, and they're all 100% residential. So again, you see the studios in green, the 1-bedrooms in yellow, and then a couple 2-bedrooms on the ends. And then on the upper floor, just a little bit different configuration with additional 2-bedroom units and a different configuration of 1- and 2-bedroom units. This is the rendering of the project. So the top rendering is the north elevation. So that's the side of the building that would face Albert Avenue. You can see the entranceway here in the center of the building. The building is set back from the site, and we'll look at that a little bit more closely in a moment. They have proposed to do sort of that black aluminum rail fencing along the front to provide, a little bit of separation between the sidewalk and the front area of the project. And then the south elevation is the elevation facing the alleyway. So you can see here where that back area, again, that sort of U-shaped space that you saw from the aerial view looking down, you can see that's the patio area where you have steps leading up into that space. And then over on the right side of that, you can see that access point for the dumpster access and other sort of back of house access that you need for projects of this nature. And then the next two renderings are for the west elevation. So this would be the side of the building that would be adjacent to Wild Goose Inn. And then the east elevation, which would be adjacent to what would remain the city parking lot. I'm going to shift and we're going to go to look at just the layout of the site and a little more technical side to give you a better sense of what things look like sort of at the street level. So what they're proposing, I mentioned earlier, the site itself is outlined in this darker black line that runs along the edge of the site. You can see the sidewalk that's proposed is designed to line up with the sidewalk currently as it's configured in front of the Wild Goose Inn, where you have that sidewalk up to the curb, and that runs along the length of the property. But then behind the fencing that I indicated before is some additional some additional pathways, walkways for access to the building, including that front entranceway. They do have a proposed sidewalk, an 8-foot sidewalk along the east of the building that would go from Albert Avenue back to the existing alleyway, which is connected here at the bottom of your screen, and then of course the parking lot here. In terms of parking on the site, one of the things that we heard this evening from the developer was discussion about trying to configure for some additional parking spaces. The city, if this project were to go forward, we'd recommend that the parking lot here no longer be a gated parking lot, but be sort of an open access where we have a pay-on-foot machine as well as the pay app. That would allow us to eliminate a lot of the equipment and the overhead canopy here that would provide a few additional spaces. We figure we might be able to add another 5 to 6 spaces on reconfiguring that surface lot. So there's approximately 35 that would remain, so you might get up near 40. In addition to that, we've discussed the option of adding parallel parking, the length of the property, really from about the Wild Goose Inn down the road, to add additional 10 or 12 parallel parking spaces. The developer did suggest the option where you could look at angled parking that might add up to another 27 spaces. That gets problematic in terms of how it meshes with our non-motorized transportation plan and potential conflicts with cyclists and pedestrians and other things. But we think at least another 10 to 12 spaces on the street would be potentially possible there. Going down to this illustration, which is the landscape plan that shows the circles are some of the larger tree plantings along the front of the property and the green space, as well as plantings along the alleyway and trees back along the alleyway as well. There's also a number of street lights in the back that would need to remain, obviously, for appropriate lighting for the site as well. In terms of the overall site, that gives a pretty good layout. If we get into questions, we can talk about those. As far as action that occurred with the Planning Commission and the DDA, so the Planning Commission had a public hearing, of course, and had several additional meetings to discuss the project. They ultimately recommended 5-2 to approve the project. They had 2 additional conditions that they were recommending. One is that the parking on the east side, again, the city-owned lot, remain in place. and employ solutions that favor the use by adjoining businesses. There's 22nd condition, the second one that they proposed, was also to specify ride sharing and delivery options within the site plan. The DDA also recommended to approve this project on a 6-4 vote, and they recommended 3 additional conditions of approval. One is that any parking lease with the developer be restricted to the upper levels of the garages or the nested areas. The 24th condition, second one that they proposed, was that staging does not occur in the remaining parking lot adjacent to the 500 block. And the third one, which would be the 25th condition potentially, if you so choose, is that the alley closures be limited to utility or for safety purposes. In other words, trying to maintain that alley access throughout the construction period of the project. In terms of the parking, the developer is requesting a parking agreement that's on the agenda after the site plan special use permit. They are requesting to lease 130 spaces. Those would be primarily in the Division garage, but also in the Charles garage. And they're also requesting a service charge or a payment in lieu of taxes, also known as a pilot, that would reduce their annual tax burden. In addition to all of the information that we attached, the Planning Commission minutes, the staff report, we had the parking study, the housing study, all the materials that the Planning Commission looked at, as well as the communication to them. We did add 2 new additional pieces of information in your packet. The first one is the history of 530 Albert going back to the early 90s, where we looked at the 2 different proposals that were put before City Council and approved for other development, primarily first floor and lower level commercial with upper floor residential, sort of 2 different versions of that in 1992 and then 1997. And then also background materials on the lease negotiations. That was another request of council, wanting to see the communications that went back and forth between city staff and the owners of that parking lot. So we provided that as well. We can certainly go into more detail on the pilot and the parking agreement at this point or when we get to those items on the agenda. But at this moment, I'll just pause right here and take a breath and see if there's any questions that I can answer for council.
I did have a question. I might not have been clear when I asked to have documents attached. I was hoping for Mr. Fehrenbach's memo when he brought the lease to council or whatever was attached to that agenda. I recall it talking about one of the reasons not to renew that was because it was not really paying for itself, was my remembering of that. And I was wondering what our annual parking revenue in that lot was based on our lease.
Yeah, so the parking revenue varies on an annual basis. We've generated historically before the pandemic, I think we were averaging $350,000 to $360,000 a year in total revenue. Now that includes both this portion of the lot owned by the Metzger Fabians as well as the city-owned portion. So if you apportion that out, that's reduced. In terms of net operating income, again, that will vary. There were some years where that was quite low in the $30,000 or $40,000 range, and then there were some years when it was higher. Certainly during the pandemic, I expect that those numbers would be in the negative.
And then that $300,000, does that include the city's portion of the Bailey lot?
Yeah,
as
the
well as the portion
350
that
to
was leased?
360, yes, that larger
Okay.
number would be part of
What
the city.
I'm kind of trying to get at is we've had several members of the audience talk about lost revenue. While we were leasing that lot from the Fabians, their tax liability was transferred to us, or it was waived, or how did that work?
It was a mix. We had different configurations in terms of we were responsible for taxes, and then some of that got shifted. There was also a time period where we did some revenue sharing with them if we hit certain thresholds. So that's been
Okay.
variable.
Okay. Just because, so looking at lost revenue based on a market value building versus the building that is built, it seems to me kind of not an equivalent way to make that comparison. So right now, we have the only revenue we're receiving from this lot is the parking revenue. And then whatever portion of the property tax was not offset by the Metzger-Fabian's lease.
Correct.
And if we built the building as proposed with the pilot, we're looking at about $500,000 in tax revenue, if and now this is, I think this came from, I'm not sure if this is attached to the agenda. If it's not, if we can rectify that, the communication that was communicated to council via email today, which I believe also went to Mr. Hank, because it was he that requested it. So that is an increase, actually, over what we are receiving for that lot right now, although it is not as much as we would receive if we had a fully taxed market rate building, which would be, I believe somebody mentioned a hotel as one of the possible other things that could be built here. So it's only a loss compared to something that doesn't exist yet.
Right, exactly. So to step back on sort of the scenario planning, it's just that, right? There are scenarios that are comparisons, and you can't always presume that one will automatically happen if the other doesn't, right? It's just
Right.
simply looking at if these options were
Right.
pursued. What we do know is that the tax revenue, right, not looking at the parking revenue, right now as it stands today, is a lower amount than we would receive in total from the pilot, right? The pilot
Right.
would generate more revenue. We estimate 2.2 million over 30 years versus 875,000 in tax revenue, right, comparison
Right.
from pilot to that. Now, if you look at a project, and this is what the assessor did, he looked at this project on a unit basis. If it did not receive a pilot and it was fully taxed, like other housing in downtown at market rate, it would generate $23.5 million in total tax revenue over the course of the 30 years. Now, the city gets a smaller portion of each of those, but it would still be substantially more, right?
Right.
But it would not be affordable housing. It would be
Right.
market rate.
But just to complete my scenario, the only way that the city would receive a full market value rate for this development is if a private development similar in scale to this, but not receiving a pilot, was built there. So the parking would still be gone. We would still have whatever traffic was generated by having a building with that many people in it.
Right, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, only if it was constructed and built.
Okay. And then similarly, I know that there's been some talk about a particular housing study or a particular parking study, but we also have a full record of everyone that goes in and out of our parking ramps. And so when our parking administrator tells us that we're at 60% capacity in our system, that's like an hourly running total that we can actually look at and say that we have 60% capacity in our system.
Yeah, so our peak capacity is in that range,
Or
the
60%
60 to
occupancy.
65
Sorry, yeah.
occupancy at peak hour. Now, what that is essentially that peak hour across the system during a typical week. That's not our occupancy on game day Saturdays, right? We know those are totally different scenarios
Absolutely.
where we're 100% occupied, right? But if you look at sort of the everyday usage. Now, that 65% might be 100% in certain areas, and it might be 40% in others, right? So it averaging out.
But if
yes.
I'm remembering correctly, the high occupancy is actually in the Grove garage and in the Albert garage, and that it gets less as we go to the east.
Yeah, in terms of garages, absolutely. Albert and Grove have the highest, and then occupancy drops at Charles and further at Division.
Okay. And then I guess similarly, talking about lost parking revenue, since we do not have full occupancy, if we are selling sites, if we are selling parking spots that are currently vacant, that is an increase in revenue over nothing.
That's right. If you have available spaces that are currently empty, that would be additional revenue. Now, what we're doing currently, and so one of the things we did when we looked at parking revenue is we assumed that the spaces, if they were market rate, are about 90% occupied, because what happens is our occupancy varies. So this time of year, we actually have occupancy above 100%. We oversell permits because we have different types of users. We have
And that's the scenario that was brought forward at the podium where a permit has been sold, but no vehicle is occupying that site. So to an outside observer, it appears vacant. In our system, it's considered occupied.
Right. Yes, it is. It's considered essentially unavailable because if it's a resident that has it, they expect it to be there. If it's an office worker, they expect their parking space to be there. So you have to make availability. Now, we can oversell because we know how to calculate those two different variables out. But then in the summer months, we have very low occupancy. We might have, for instance, 50% of our permits in division are actually leased because we see a huge drop-off with the student population leaving.
Now, the
So-
students buy yearly permits or monthly permits?
They typically do monthly.
Okay.
So what we'll often see is they'll come in August and get their first month and then continue to buy those throughout the school year. They'll renew on a month-to-month basis.
And then my other question, and I know that you are not our parking administrator, so I appreciate you very much having tracked down all of this information and kept it in your brain. If I'm remembering correctly, our average trip visit for non-permitted people within the garages is less than an hour. Does that ring true?
That is,
Obviously not counting game days.
I can't give you that answer 100% sure, but that sounds about right,
Sounds about
given
right.
our average transient
Okay,
user time.
because I'm thinking about that additional 35 spaces that is still going to be available as surface parking next to Bailey Lot, and like making sure that there's turnover within that lot so that people who are trying to patronize the businesses will have parking available, at least turning over throughout the day. I guess I'm going to say obviously, but perhaps it's not obvious. There will be no permits sold in that remaining Bailey surface lot. It will be fully hourly trip-driven parking.
That is correct. We would not sell permits there because with that reduction of the 86, we don't feel like we would have the capacity to do that. We sell right now, it's around 15 permits that are sold in that lot because typically we're not at 100% capacity for most of the time.
That would be 15 out of the entire
Out of the 121.
120.
Right, so we'd go to zero.
Okay.
With the remaining.
But we're also losing 83 spots.
Correct.
Okay. I will have more questions, but I'm going to take
Sure.
a break. Thank you.
Questions?
Can you tell me, do you know what page the rent amounts is on for the units that showed the studios and the one-bedroom and the two-bedroom?
Yeah, that's in the developer response. Bear with me a second while I scroll down to that. There are a lot of pages in this document here. Let's see here. Okay, so it would be, I'm just looking at the compilation number here. So now on mine, because I downloaded the PDF, I apologize, it would be the 96th page of the document.
Okay.
It has a table with the rents highlighted in yellow. So it's after the plans, so after the renderings, it's about 6 pages after the renderings.
Okay. So my window closed out on me, but sometimes people say the rent requirement then would be 3 times the person's income. And so I'm looking to confirm that.
Yeah, so what they have, I'll read the table here. So what they show is for a studio at the 60% AMI, so the area median income, they're targeting 40 to 80%, so 60 is the midpoint. They're showing a maximum allowable rent for 60% AMI at $930, including utility allowances of $70, actual tenant contract rent, a maximum of $860. That maximum income would be $37,200. For a one-bedroom, again at 60% AMI, they're showing the contract rent maximum of $914, a maximum income of $42,480. And then for the two-bedroom, 60% AMI, we have $1,087 contract rent maximum with a maximum income of $47,820.
Okay. So the person, again, the maximum income the person could make in order to move into the two-bedroom would be $47,000?
At the 60% AMI now, the way the AMI scale works is that if they're at 40%, that would actually be a lower number, and that would adjust the rent down. If it's at 80%, it's a higher number and a slightly higher rent, so there's a range.
Okay. Are utility allowances based on a percentage, or how does that work?
Yeah, this is where I'm going to probably defer to the developer, if council wants to have him come up and speak to that. I'd have Mr. Young address that.
Yes.
And then he can also confirm if I spoke correctly on my last answer.
Just to clarify, utilities are included in the...
Please make sure you're speaking into the microphone. Thank you so much.
Utilities are included in the base rent, just to clarify that. So when he makes a statement about a number, that includes utilities. Utilities are specified by MSHDA, what each one, depending on the area of the state of Michigan. So could be $80 for a studio or a one-bedroom, and that is deducted then from the max rents. And I should tell you the max rents are set by HUD under the LIHTC program. That does not mean that's what would be paid by the prospective resident. That is the top line rent, depending on their AMI. They obviously will probably be paying less. But we're giving you what HUD has provided. Those rates are published, by the way, on the HUD website, and anybody can see what those are. But again, utilities are included, and it really is based on the person's AMI.
And utilities does not include water, is that correct?
All utilities are included in their rents.
Is internet a utility?
No, it is not, as defined by the federal program.
Okay.
So that would be one that is not included. Water, sewer, garbage, electrical, gas are included utilities under the definition.
Thank you.
Mr. Young, while you're at the podium, we've seen a certain amount of anxiety from the public comment in terms of people who are afraid that this will switch over to a market rate rental, or that students will take over and we won't have units left for market rate, or for workforce housing rather. Can you talk a little bit about, and I am still completely baffled by low income, MSHDA, everything. So can you just kind of talk about what assurances are built into the process that will kind of guarantee the product, I guess, if that makes sense?
The assurances that are built into the LIHTC program, as promulgated by Congress in 1986, are very severe and strict. Those are implemented on a statewide basis by all states, by the way. And in the state of Michigan, MSHDA has a responsibility to ensure that developers, owners, not-for-profits, for-profits are following those required rules. There are severe penalties for not following those rules. This is going to stay for a minimum of 33 years, because it's a 30-year period, plus there's a 3-year period after that this will be an affordable development in the city of East Lansing. And there was no reason that it wouldn't continue to be affordable at that time. Was there another question you had to follow up on?
No, I just, it seems to be something that's weighing heavily on people's minds, so.
Students you mentioned.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know,
students.
That was brought up too. As a matter of what has been promulgated under the LIHTC program, the students are a not allowable tenant in a LIHTC development. However, there are certain exceptions to that rules, but those are really minor exceptions that are maybe 1 or 2%. Students cannot occupy the development.
And Councilmember Watson, going back to the rents, I was able to pull those up real quickly. And on the low end of, say, an efficiency of a one bedroom, an efficiency rents would be, and it would likely have a 5 in front of it.
Say again?
Would likely have a 5 in front of it. So 550, something along those lines, on the low end for rents.
Again, it depends on the area median income of the resident, and those rules are, that you have to follow.
Correct. And it's also market-based, so.
That's going to be on the very low end of that AMI, right?
That would be correct statement.
That's under
okay.
40%.
You're really looking in the mid-5s to the 900s to 1,000, somewhere in there, depending on the AMI of the person, depending on the family size, and depending on the unit type.
Yeah.
These are all rules under the program.
Yeah. And per our market studies, independent market studies that MSHDA requires us to conduct, the East Lansing market can't really, the rents can't be, the East Lansing market can't support rents more than about 1,000. So that's likely the top end of what we'll be charging.
On the affordable basis.
Correct.
And so, speaking of students, in this community, a lot of landlords are able to begin leasing their apartments in October for rents and occupancy that's not going to be due until the next year. Do you see yourselves following that same path? Which, to me, you wouldn't be, especially if the students aren't your population. Do you see yourself leasing out your apartments at a normal rate for adults or young people who need housing, which is typically 60 days, 60 days prior, not months prior?
We would anticipate exactly what you said, that's how that would be performed, okay? We're not going to require someone to sign a lease for another year from now because there's a shortage of affordable housing. It is really, and according to the program in MSHDA, it is really first come, first basis, okay? And you have to be totally colorblind for any type of situation. You cannot. Again, these are the rules that promulgated.
Fair housing rules are very strict.
Correct.
Are they primarily one-year leases, or do you have multi-year leases as well?
It is an affordable housing development, okay, that will typically have a one-year lease. However, it is an affordable housing. If a person has an economic challenge or something like that, we have to work with them. And so, and that means even not kicking them out if on all the appropriate things, as long as there's an appropriate process being followed, okay? Again, it is not to our benefit or anybody's benefit, to have people that don't have housing. And, but typically it'll be a year's lease, but again, it could be month to month.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's more of a management question, but typically across our portfolio, 14,000 plus units, it's year-long leases.
I know that you listened to public comment and made some suggested changes that hopefully might be helpful if this was to go through as far as the parking spaces go. I know that you've spoken with Wild Goose Inn. I was wondering who else you've been interacting with and how involved you've been in the community discussion around this.
We have met with other business owners, okay, but we have been respectful of them when they have obviously provide the challenges to the project. We have said that we're open to any discussions. We met again at the DDA meeting when we were there back in August and talked to the business owners who objected to the development, and we said we would be open. We always said we would be open to talking to Council Member Watson. Any suggestions to help? We have come up with ideas. We, as I said, met with the city last week to try to say there must be a way to create a better win-win situation here, if at all possible, to create some parking back into the development. As I said, it was understanding the parking is going away no matter what. So in this case, we're saying, how do we bring parking back into it? Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
How long is your construction cycle, do you anticipate?
a construction cycle of this magnitude is somewhere in the 17 to 22 month period. So we tell people 18 to 24 months to be on the safe side, but that's 17 to 22 months.
So all due respect to parking, I do actually think that we have unused parking within our system. My main concern for this project is the impact, not after development. I think actually the businesses in that block will find that they have a benefit having permanent residents in their backyard. But having been through a construction cycle in the Albert and Grove Street area as a business, it is brutal. And if we are going to lose businesses in this block, which I think we all have heard from our audience, and I think anybody who's been in East Lansing knows that we have some pretty treasured businesses down there. All of our businesses in our town are treasured. But that's my main concern, is that 18 to 24 month cycle is going to be the hardest part. Now, when we had our large development on this end of town, Albert and right along Albert there, and on Abbott, that construction cycle butt up right against the pandemic, which was an absolute slaying. It was terrible. So we had businesses that hung on through construction and then immediately were faced with COVID shutdown. And we did lose a lot of businesses that I still regret not having as neighbors and not being able to patronize. So I think it's been brought up. I'm not sure if it's been put into any of the conditions. I'm not sure if we can put construction staging conditions into a site plan approval. Is that something that we can do?
Yes.
And is that, did I miss that in here? Was that in either the DDA or the Planning Commission's site plan approval?
Yeah, so if you look at the Planning Commission letter of referral, they have a condition. I believe it was Commissioner Bowman who proposed this. He actually recommended that it's condition number 21. It says that the remaining parking spaces on the east side of the existing lot be retained as parking and possibly employing solutions that favor use of adjacent businesses. But then the DDA took that and went further, and they have a condition that's recommended to essentially ensure that no staging occurs adjacent to the 500 block. So one, again, focusing initially on preserving the parking, but then the other one. Yep.
So the one, it says at least a portion should remain open. And then this one says, the city-owned parking lot shall remain open for parking throughout the redevelopment of the adjacent site and not be allowed to be used for site logistics, staging of equipment and materials. Furthermore, staging of construction equipment and materials should not be allowed within or adjacent to the 500 block of East Grand River. To me, that's a pretty critical designation. Is that, how do you guys feel about staging a large apartment building with no place to put your equipment?
Well, we've already have talked with the city on how to produce a containment plan, in which we have also probably for staging used the current staging that Granger is using to the west as our staging area. It's pretty easy to bring stuff over from there, okay? And there will be a crane on site, but it will fit into the middle of the courtyard where it is open there. And there will be some blockage probably on that one lane on Albert that we'll put in as a containment plan. So we're proposing now to leave the city-owned parking lot alone, and that it should be open for parking during construction. There could be at something for safety that one day shows up that may be something like that, but that would be a rare occasion. It would just be for safety reasons.
Okay, and it would be temporary?
It would be a temporary, like whatever it would be for pouring concrete in the morning or something like that.
And then I don't know, Mr. Dempsey, I guess this is a suggestion to take to our parking administrator to encourage turnover in that lot. It's our more expensive parking. I believe that is the highest rate parking downtown, those surface lots. So I don't think we probably have people that put their cars there all day. But have we considered having like a 3-hour time limit on parking in that lot so that people have to vacate those parking spaces and make space for more, later customers to come?
Yeah, I mean, a time limit is certainly something we can look at. We know historically that we've had issues with employee parking or even just students who going to campus, being willing to pay. I mean, that's, the time limit could potentially help address that partially. Enforcement is important too. I know that's always a double-edged sword, but I think enforcement is important if you're going to really keep it to people who are using it for the retail businesses.
And then when this large construction was staged on Albert, I'm trying to remember some of the city-initiated business support things that were part of that. I remember, because I took advantage of it, there was a certain quantity of parking validation tickets that were made available for, I think it was 50 maybe a month, I don't remember, for free to those businesses. So whether they were part of our validation program or not, which by the way, it is 50% off for validation, so that already exists. For businesses that take advantage of it. And then I think there was something about meal vouchers being provided to the construction workers to encourage them to purchase their meals downtown. And I can't remember what all else. But I can also tell you that it wasn't sufficient, just due to the, in regards of the stress that happened on the businesses that were adjacent to that block. So whatever we did then, we should try to implement at least as much now, but really there needs to be more support to the businesses, because that construction cycle is the most brutal part of this.
We are putting together a support plan for the businesses that we want to bring to the DDA, okay? So it includes not only during construction, but after construction too, on how the 530 development would interact with its neighbors. So, but also during construction, yes, we have as part of those plans as vouchers, as parking vouchers, as meal vouchers, and other things, because not everybody obviously serves food in the 530 district, but other type vouchers that would be able to use for those businesses. That is part of the plan, and it is our intention to bring that to the DDA. We thought that was the appropriate place.
I can attest that you can train customers to park in parking garages, but it's a long process and it requires constant training and liberal application of parking vouchers, which anyway, just my experience, but. Okay, I think that's all my questions for now. Questions and comments?
Questions?
I have a question for Tim. Any truth behind that there's other bids? Like if this doesn't go through, there's another bidder, and another bidder?
We've been informed that there were other bidders. I can't verify any of those. I've not been privy to any of that. I believe the representative from the property owner is here. He might be able to speak to that, but I can't confirm for certain that that's the case, but that's what I've been told.
And Chubb, I didn't understand what the person was talking about a referendum. So can you break that down for me?
Sure. So under Chapter 6 of our charter, anytime that the council implements a new ordinance, if the public provides forms in an appropriate manner to the clerk within 30 days that include, I believe, 15% of the residents of the registered voters of the city, that the ordinance would then be frozen and would be subject to either a rescission by council or placed on the next regular election ballot. And that's just from the top of my head, but that is my recollection.
With all due respect to you, Mr. Monson's had his 5 minutes in the sun, did a nice job, but now we're at the council, so please.
So some numbers I would like to see, probably with the number of units, and based upon this is to the city and probably to our finance people, on the as we're talking about income, the kind of the income tax basis of a full unit downtown, and what that income tax basis would be, as far as correct to be.
Well, we've got a 2% income tax, and we're talking about people who have income of, let's say, $30,000 to be extremely conservative. So, and then that obviously wouldn't count any children that were part of it. So on the $30,000, that is $600 a year times, let's assume 90% or 9 not full occupancy, so that's another $60,000. So it's not a ton, but it's definitely more than would come at a non-residential. And I don't know why I have hotel stuck in my mind, but I was told that the next most attractive project was a hotel, so that would not have any residential income tax associated with it.
Okay, for the purpose of moving the discussion along, I move that we approve the site plan and special use permit application submitted by 530 Albert 2023 LLC for the property at 530 Albert Avenue to construct a 5-story building with 122 units of affordable rental housing and approximately 1,100 square feet of commercial space, subject to the 22 conditions recommended by the Planning Commission in the referral letter dated September 28, 2023, and the 3 additional conditions, parentheses 23-25, end parentheses, recommended by the Downtown Development Authority in the referral letter dated September 5th, 2023.
Look for a second. Moved by Councilperson Brookover, second by Councilperson Watson. Further discussion?
I've got some discussion items. As I had shared, I've been seeing the letters that have come in and also listened to the public comment and listened to y'all today. And what I'd like to do is vote in favor of this plan and listen to, like, if people are worried about going in ramps with different levels, understanding if there's a higher crime rate, or do we need lights, or how can people feel safe. I want to connect with our parking task force, because we've talked at times about letting people know where the vacant lots are and where they can park at, so that people aren't as lost as they might be. And we've got the work with the DDA, so we'll continue to hear feedback from the Peanut Barrel specifically, but others, about how this process is going and how we can make it better for people. I am a huge fan of affordable housing in the city of East Lansing. I've shared before, if this was now that I was looking for a place to live, I would not be able to afford to live here. The opportunity and more opportunities for people of different incomes, just like people get paid differently who work in this community, the people who live the furthest out should not be the people that make the least amount of money. I love this idea, and I'm going to vote in favor of it, but I also want to let everyone know that, like, I'm hearing your concerns, and I want to work with you along the way through the build, and also through the experience, and hope that this is a more income diverse community because of decisions like this.
Discussion? I just want to say thank you, as typical, for the community, for the outpouring really on both sides. And I know oftentimes you have to index for who's not in the room as well, particularly in these situations. Obviously, really strong opinions, and we received quite a few strong opinions on the opposite side in the effort to do affordable housing. I'll say my chief concern overall, I think, parking really is the chief concern, but it's really a broad concern for the downtown and the numbers around parking, and even to the west and to the east, and seeing people doing valet and scurrying around here and there and doing all these other things and machinations around parking, as well as we've absorbed MSU-FCU downtown and everything. It's like all arrows are pointing to parking. And that's just typical of cities and that type of thing. But I'd hate to see that be the full opposition to affordable housing. But I do see the concerns and appreciate all those businesses in the area right down there. This is where my kids grew up and frequented those businesses right there, and myself actually for all the 30 years of being down here and hanging out in East Lansing. So yeah, this transformation is difficult, and even having conversation around it. And I just want to thank everyone for all their input around the conversation.
I do have some comments.
Yes, sir.
I want to just preface my comments with, I guess, three things that I use as guideposts tonight. One is, obviously, there's competing property interests and rights here, and people have strong opinions, and I guess this is East Lansing, and they can express their strong opinions, and maybe that's persuasive, and maybe it's not. But people with property interests have the right to pursue those property interests. The second thing is, I'm sorry, folks, I just can't sit here and hear about, quote, workforce housing, end quote, in East Lansing and not make one historical comment, which is one reason we're having this discussion in 2023 is because sometime in the 1980s, Michigan State University decided to not have workforce housing. So, we have letters talking about graduate students not being able to afford to live in East Lansing. Well, I don't know, in the 1960s, I went to school with kids whose parents were getting graduate degrees and living over in Spartan Village in the different apartments. And so here we are arguing about this little piece of land in downtown East Lansing for workforce housing, which at some level is going to be housing to service employees of Michigan State University and other employees. And there's vast amounts of property across the street where housing got torn down. So to me, there's a certain irony in that. Does that help the discussion tonight? No. The third thing that informs me is the site history. And if you look at the documents that Mr. Dempsey included going back to the 90s, and I had said something in one of our earlier meetings that I was on the Planning Commission when some of these proposals came through. And this will inform why I'm going to do what I'm going to do tonight, which is, if you look at the proposals from the Metzger and Fabian families, and I'm guessing I'm the only person I know I'm the only person at this table that actually sat and talked to the fathers who owned these houses about their proposals. But if you look at those proposals, they weren't looking at the volume of housing units that are being proposed tonight, and they weren't looking at the heights that are being proposed tonight. So having said that, let me just say this. I think there's a path through this thicket. I don't think we're here tonight with that path, but I hear the proponents, the developer talk, well, now we have a plan. I mean, all due respect to them, well, now we have a plan, and we're going to take it to the DDA. And Councilperson Watson says that she wants to follow this. And the Planning Commission puts conditions on about what's going to happen with the parking lot next door. And Ms. Gregg has lived through all the stuff in downtown East Lansing when we're building these, what I call high-rise, quote, senior facilities, and discombobulated everything. And so I would have hoped that the discussion we were having tonight would have happened before tonight. Now, there's a lot of things that's been happening in East Lansing in the last 10 or 12 months, and we're de-staffed, and things have not been put together in a way that I think is susceptible to to an intelligent city council vote tonight because of all the things people are talking about. It's like we have a kind of a finished product, but we don't have a finished product. And we have competing property rights. And so I'm going to vote against this, and there's three reasons I see in the special use permit analysis. The first one is under A3, where it says the proposed size, height, architectural character, and placement of new or expanded structures on the site shall be reasonably compatible with the existing or anticipated buildings on adjacent properties. Here's what the staff report said on August 23rd, 2023. Quote, the proposed building is 5 stories of residential use and 59.6 feet, not including the elevator shaft, on the first floor. There is 1,135 square feet of retail commercial space, which incidentally, if somebody would propose that we get rid of that and make that floor apartments and cut off a floor at the top or 2 floors at the top, I might have a different view of this development. And we could do that under the existing statute. But I don't think that's been proposed. So on the first floor, it says the proposed uses are compatible with the existing mixed-use fabric of the downtown. Well, yeah, that's kind of true. I'm not sure we need any more commercial on the first floor, so that I guess it'll just compete with the commercial that's going to be on Grand River. But the reality is, I don't necessarily think that it's compatible with surrounding uses, given all the issues that have been put in front of us. The second thing is, under the specific uses section, paren 4 and paren B, it says, quote, the number of multiple family dwelling units, the permitted occupancy of the units, and the height and size of structures containing such units shall be limited to be compatible with adjacent development patterns in any nearby residential districts. And the staff says, quote, the residential properties across the street are 3 stories. I think that's the new, what I call the new Hagen development, but I'm not positive. And the residential uses to the east and southeast are 5 stories. This height is compatible with those uses. I'm just simply not sure I agree with the staff on that, and I think that's a really close call. But really, to me, under the ordinances that we have to look at, the key thing in the end is section A, paren 6 and paren. The proposed use shall not materially diminish the economic value of adjacent properties or the city as a whole. And this is what the staff says during a year of staff turmoil, and they're doing the best they could. Quote, there is no indication that the proposed use would materially diminish the economic value of adjacent properties or the city as a whole. This is based on property values alone and does not include an assessment of any direct impacts to individual retail operations. Now, I understand some folks got an economist to give some opinion. I'm not necessarily accepting that opinion because I think it's de minimis. But the reality is, our staff could not answer that question. And if our staff can't answer that question positively, then I can't answer that question positively. And so for that reason, I can't say that the proposed use shall not materially diminish the economic value of adjacent properties or the city as a whole. And that, among other things, is the primary reason why I'm going to vote against this tonight. Now, I didn't, you know, I'm not stupid. I mean, the folks that are against this, I understand that, but there's a lot of other things that could go in this site. And, you know, this may be a question of be careful what you ask for. because something else may go in there. I hope not. I hope maybe through all of this process, there can be a dialogue so that the developer and the business owners and the DDA and the Planning Commission can really sit down and start talking about how to cooperate to make this workforce housing and parking and businesses and competing property rights all work together for everybody.
I would just follow up on that as my argument as well. I really wish we could get low-income housing on this site, even though I'm not a huge fan that on a busy Final Four night, St. Patrick's Day, that some people, future tenants, are going to be excited about that, being elbow to elbow with students that are going to be doing what students do. But in favor of low-income housing, if this is the site that we choose with parking, I just feel like the businesses aren't being heard here. They're screaming, not only here, but at the Planning Commission meetings on August 9th, August 23rd. They were in huge opposition at that public hearing. They're just not being heard. And I'm not voting for this because I really feel it's going to hurt the businesses. I've always been concerned with the density downtown. I've spoken about this before. I've seen videos of St. Patrick's Day and how our students, take over the streets down there, and they're having fun. For the most part, they're behaving. Police are not in force on those moments. And now we're going to add more density downtown. So the main reason that I'm going to vote against this is I really don't feel like we're listening to our businesses, and I'm not going to vote for something where our businesses are going to suffer.
Yeah, I do have to kind of speak to one point of Councilperson Brookover. I think it's good to make the points on that stuff, but I don't want to just can kind of continue to diminish the work of the staff. I think some of that's a little bit of lawyering. And we appreciate it, but the people who are present and doing that work are working hard, and pretty much the way cities are designed, from being around it at this point, we're in a way we're always working from a deficit or from what I call lack of redundancies and different type of staffing levels. So I don't want to insult the work of the people who did put in tons of hours and that kind of thing to try to qualify the reason for your objection. The objection's fine unto itself. So I just want to just kind of appreciate and speak to thanks for the work. This is hundreds of pages and hundreds of hours of work from staff and planning and other people who put time into that. So we kind of I don't like that narrative, and I don't appreciate, I don't think it's necessary to make that point.
Ron, I'm sorry. If you took it that way, I apologize. It certainly wasn't meant that way, and I wasn't casting aspersions on the staff. So, for the record.
Thank you. But and once again, I'll just come back to the top before we vote here and just say thanks for all the input from all sides here, and definitely just that we continue to frame this conversation. And I'll take 2 points from probably what's going to end up both sides of the question. Kind of be careful what you ask for. I do want to also kind of commend, I think for the most part, there's things from the beginnings of these processes with any developers and part of ACD's paying a price for East Lansing's history with development, and we talked about that a little bit. It's just, it's been some raw deals here over the years, and I think that people are gun shy with that, but I think you've approached this with a lot of integrity and just kind of clear talk, so we appreciate that. And we know the difficulty of doing any type of attainable and affordable housing because others have talked about it and failed and backed out at every front. You're the only people who have really come all the way to the forefront with a real effort to bring affordable. My primary objection to this is overall, I think this conversation around parking, I think there's just something more there. I've never really kind of trusted the numbers moving around on parking in general. And I'll kind of, from my perspective, I'll kind of charge city manager development to really look at parking. I think there's something more to that on both ends. And as I watch us try to park and come to events now at MSU FCUs, and I've watched valets scurrying back and forth and trying to dump cars and doing all this other stuff. We've got an overall challenge around parking. I think I'm in complete support of this project, but I'm also kind of not amenable to another disruption to parking, and I'm sure that one of the main points for my decision at this point is around the kind of the subletting of the parking spaces, as well as the total elimination of a huge portion of the surface parking. But I will say the surface parking is going away, so I would prepare for whatever that conversation has had in that business community. I don't see how that survives this long term, but I think there is a larger question around parking that perhaps even from a new parking post-pandemic perspective, that we get another good look at parking, because as I move around, I don't see it functioning in the way I think it's supposed to downtown. So at this point, any further discussion? All right. Roll call. Okay.
Councilmember Brookover,
No.
Councilmember Garcia,
No.
Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg,
Yes.
Mayor Bacon,
No.
So does that kind of torpedo the rest of our agenda then? Since they're, oh, right, we've got 5.4, okay. I guess what do we do with the other two agenda items that were directly connected to that site plan? Just
Yeah,
Let
I mean,
'em-
I think
let 'em
at this
down?
point, I would recommend you vote them down.
Okay.
Because there's no associated site plan, so
Sure.
the agreements would be moot. If the developer comes forward in the future with a new project, that ordinance and that parking agreement could be brought forward at that point.
Ron, are you calling it, the agenda item? Have you called it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I move we adopt ordinance 1526, service charge in lieu of taxes for the property located at 530 Albert Avenue.
Second.
Moved by Councilperson Brookover, second by Mayor Pro Tem. Further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor?
Do you need a roll call on this one, too?
Or just up and down?
I don't think that's necessary at this point.
Thank you.
All in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Motion fails. Next up, item 5.3. Look for a motion.
I move we approve the parking agreement with 530 Albert LLC with the staff recommendation fee schedule as detailed in Exhibit A of the agreement.
Second.
Moved by Councilperson Brookover, second by Mayor Pro Tem Gregg. All in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Motion fails. All right. Next up, item 4.5, formerly item 4.4, consideration of fiscal year 2024 budget amendment for various funds in a combined amount of, what do we got here?
Mr. Mayor, with the permission of the city manager, I would just move that we table this to the next regular meeting of the city council, unless the city manager feels there's some absolute time parameter tonight.
Can this go to the 24th, city manager?
You said regular or special?
Regular.
Can we put it on the special for the 24th?
Well, I think your special's going to get kind of crowded too, so this was.
Not like this.
No, next week is only two things.
Whatever you guys want to do, I don't care.
Yeah. Can we move it to the special? Is that okay? with you?
Motion to the 24th.
Is that okay with you? Well, you're ready now tonight, though, aren't you?
I mean, if there's specific questions that maybe aren't addressed, that would give
Frank,
us time to address them.
Let's push through it, because this was on the consent agenda anyway, so if it's not, it was just for I think, to get some certain stuff across, correct?
Audrey's already sat through this whole meeting.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. We'll move through this.
So tonight we have our first budget amendment for fiscal year 2024. This should look very familiar to most of you. Some of the items are routinely on these budget amendments, and then some of these items have already come across councils in various ways already for approval. One thing that looks a little bit different about this amendment is we tried to change the formatting a little bit, which hopefully improved how a budget amendment affects the total resolution and the total budget as a whole. So we're working through that format. Feedback would be appreciated if you like it or don't like it. Basically what it does is it shows the entire resolution with all funds presented. Each column is a different category of budget amendment, and then the final column shows where the amended budget would be for totality of the entire budget. So we are including funds that don't have an amendment tonight, but it just shows you the full scope of the budget kind of each time we present this. So I can go through each of those categories. So the first category is the encumbrance rollover. This is something that we do every first budget amendment as we close out the prior fiscal year. There are purchase orders that have not been completed or projects that have not been completed, and they need to carry over to the next fiscal year when we don't want to harm that year's budget, so we need to add those to the current year's budget. Not significant dollars this year. Many of those projects were rebudgeted. We kind of planned ahead for those things, so not as big as they are in some future years or some prior years. The activity versus function column, you may remember this from the last budget amendment for fiscal year 23. This was a recommendation from our auditors and from the state expanding our general fund expenditure rather than just by function, by detail activities, gives us better budget control over some of those more specific detail levels of expenditures. We just didn't quite have enough time to have this prepared for the 24 adoption, so this is just rolling it forward for the actual 24 budget, which we did for the 23 budget. The next column is the ARPA retention pay. So we, again, on the final budget amendment for fiscal year 23, included the January through June payment, and we use that as our basis for this resolution or this amendment for the July through December retention payment. Very similar eligibility requirements. Of course, we would look at any new hires that would be eligible as of July 1 and anyone that has resigned or retired during that period, so they would obviously not be eligible, but using that actual paid amount for the first 6 months, we thought was a better basis for this budget amendment. And that is all using ARPA funds, so there is a net impact of 0 to all applicable funds. And then the remaining category is the most significant category, but basically it duplicates each of the items because we show the full impact to kind of the initiating fund and then the receiving fund. So the three main things in that other category are there is a transfer from the the CIP fund back to the general fund. Last budget amendment, we needed to transfer funds to the Parks Fund because they were going to be in a deficit due to grant revenue timing. They are going to receive that revenue in the current fiscal year, so they're going to return the funds to the general fund in the current year, but we have to increase the budget in both funds to accommodate that. The second large item in that other category is income tax transfer. As you know, it's a difficult process to estimate by the end of the year. There's a lot of timing things at play at the end of the fiscal year. We have refunds by the middle of June, but we have our final budget amendment earlier in June, and we still are collecting things through July and August that we throw back to the prior fiscal year. So estimating income tax for the end of the year is not a perfect science. So we have a carryover from the income tax that we're going to allocate to the pension, infrastructure, and for public safety. And so that carryover was $1,075,000 from fiscal year '23. Again, reflecting it in the general fund for the public safety component and in CIP and local streets for the infrastructure component. And then the final item, which I think was actually excluded from the agenda item report, so I will mention it again here, is that we increased the DMB's budget for that special assessment increase that was approved by council. So those are the main items.
Any questions?
So this is for the fiscal year ending July 1st, 2024, or July 1st, 2023?
Fiscal year ending June 30th, '24.
Okay. So these are monies that are going to be utilized during this fiscal year, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Where are the salaries located in here?
So that would be in any of the expenditure sections.
I'm sorry, could you slow down a little bit?
It would be in any of the expenditure sections of a particular fund. It depends on, if we're talking about police and fire salaries, those are under public safety in the general fund. So it kind of depends on what fund you're looking at.
Okay.
Questions? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion. Do you need a motion for action on this, correct? It came off the consent agenda.
I move approval of fiscal year 2024 budget amendment for various funds in the combined amount of $2,945,240.
Second. Further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1, and meeting adjourned.